Okay, well we're here. We've got FISAC online judge training. The first time we've done anything like this, so this should be exciting. I'm going to go through the different areas of the FISAC judge training. We've got several different. That's okay. Renee, I think that maybe *6 is not the command to mute because I can still hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's cool.
I'll be quiet.
But I wonder what the command is.
That's okay. I'll just be quiet.
No, there should be a way to do it.
It said I was muted when I did it. And
it did?
It did. Let me try it again.
Nope. So that's all right. You're still unmuted. It might be like a different, maybe like *5 or something. Might as well try that. Oh well. You know what? I'm just gonna.
I was muted. I was talking and you didn't hear me, so I have to mute myself on my phone.
Oh, I got you. On your phone, you're gonna be okay. Well, I'm gonna start rolling.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So we've got at least three different types of things we're talking about today. I'm going to cover specifically presentation judging, required elements judging, and difficulty judging. There's also the head judge, but I think that those first three are the ones that really need to be focused on. If you were to pull up your, let's see, I'm going to pull up my screen and share it so at least Shay can see it. So I've got my and it talks about the three different types of scoring. That's worth the difficulty is worth half of their score. The required elements judge is worth 10% of the score. Presentation is worth 40%. So all that stuff added together makes up the full score for their routine. And this goes for single rope, double dutch, everything, team freestyle. Still broken down this way. And then the head judge will take deductions from that 100%. So we're going to start off with presentation judging first, and then we'll go into required elements, and then we'll go into difficulty. Presentation is very similar to what it was 2 years ago. They're looking for several different things, and we'll go over that. The use of music, they're still looking for that, whether it's on the beat, using accents, movement they're looking for, also form of the body and execution, and finally impression, entertainment value, originality, special moves, spectacular skills. They used a lot of different words for that. So I'm going to go into the actual presentation portion. So I think I'm going down to like page 14, maybe? Yeah, page 15. Okay, so on page 15 of the Judge's Handbook, it's about single rope presentation. It's Article 2 in the handbook. It's worth 40% of their score, and it tells you exactly what the presentation judge is responsible for. There's going to be 5 presentation judges on the panel, I believe. Yeah, 5. The presentation judge is responsible for judging the use of music, whether it's on the beat and it uses accent, and that is worth 15% of the overall score. Their spatial and positional movement is worth 5% of the overall score. The form of the body and execution is 10% of their overall score. And finally, the impression and entertainment value, originality, and how spectacular the routine was is worth 10% of their overall score. So when you add all that together, the 15, 5, 10, and 10, for single rote presentation, that adds up to the 40% of their total score. So it's important, I guess, to go into detail. Some of these percentages have changed since 2 years ago, and the Rules Committee had a long discussion about what the value of some of this stuff should be. For example, we thought that form of the body and execution needed to be worth more because we thought it was important how well people were actually executing the skills. So we decided to give them more credit for that. And here, the impression and entertainment value, this kind of goes along with what we traditionally think of as presentation judging in USA Jump Rope. Did somebody else just get in on the call? No? It says that the impression entertainment value is worth 10%, and again, that's kind of what we would normally think of as presentation in USA Jump Rope. Like, how exciting was it to watch? Were they, what was your impression of the routine? Were they looking up at you the entire time, smiling, or were they, did it look like they don't really care to be there? So that's that part. I'm going to go into detail, and it talks about judging. How do you judge the use of the music? Well, there's two parts to that, and judging the use of music as a whole is worth 15%. So you can assume someone dropped off the phone. No, I think, oh yeah, someone did drop off. Okay. Look at the fact that it's got two elements to it and assume, and you'd be right to say that each of them are worth half. So skipping to the beat is worth half of that 15%, and using the music is worth the other half of the 15%. Now, on your score sheet, it's just going to be written as a score from 1 to 10. So you're not going to have to worry about, it's a score. It's 15%, and half of that is 7.5%. So I'm going to have to give a score from 0 to 7.5. No, that's not how it works. It'll be a score from 1 to 10. I guess actually technically 0 to 10. And you can give them a score on that range, which will then be recalculated or adjusted to fit the weight of the score. But we'll talk about skipping to the beat or jumping to the beat. It says 50% of the total points for use of music comes from jumping to the beat of the music. The percentage of the total freestyle time jumped to the beat reflects the score for jumping to the beat. What it's trying to say is that we want to make sure that music is playing in the background, that it's not just background music. Okay, we've seen this before where like people turn on a song for their freestyle routine and that's basically all it is. It's just background music. The music's playing, but they're not jumping to the beat of the music. The music has a count, 8 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we want them every time the jumper jumps, we want it to be on the beat. If they were going for a perfect score here, a 10 out of 10, then it would mean that the jumper for the entire routine is jumping to the beat of the music, okay? Because it's asking you to score it to reflect the percentage of the total time that they jump to the beat. So if they jump to the beat of the music the entire time, that's 100% of the time, or 10 out of 10 for their score for skipping to the beat. It doesn't mean that they have to jump on every beat, okay? There's a difference. Some jumpers might only jump on 1, 3, 5, and 7 during parts of their routine because maybe their jumps are taking longer, or they might jump on 1, 2, 3, 4. They could even jump faster than the beat of the music and go like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The point is that that their jumps fall into pattern with the beat of the music. Okay, so whether or not they hit every beat of the music is not important, but that every time they jump, that it happens on a beat of the music. Does that make sense? I think that should be fairly straightforward. Yeah, stop me if there's questions about anything, but I'm going to keep going unless I hear otherwise. Using the music. Now this one is one of the things that I think is a little bit confusing about the presentation judging when I've listened to it in other presentations before. I'll try to make it less confusing for you, but basically the other half of that 15% comes from what it calls using the music. And an example of that would be performing some kind of special move or a special skill, like a triple under or a double bounce at a special moment or accent or recognizable part of the music. So it's not simply the fact that we're jumping to the music. It's supposed to be giving us credit for the fact that we're jumping to that particular piece of music, okay? If one piece of music is a certain tempo and I'm jumping to the beat of that music, if you turned on a different song that was the same tempo, would it make a difference for my routine? You know, are there things in my routine that are specifically choreographed to that music? When it hits like an exciting part in the music, do I do something exciting? If there's a big, hit in the music, do I do a big skill? Or if the music gets faster, do I get faster? Or if the music gets louder, do I do things that are more exciting? And every time you see something like that you think that the jumper is really using the music, you would make a note that they were using the music. And at the end of the routine, you would kind of count up how many times they used the music in a special way and give them credit for it. Now there's, on the rule book, it gives you kind of a guideline for what their score should be in relation to how many times you made a mark for the jumper using the music. But I would say that those are just guidelines, that really you should be looking again for something like the percentage of the routine in which they used the music. So, I mean, did they just use the music accents like just at the beginning and the end of their routine? And if that were the case, then that's a very small percentage of the routine that they were really taking advantage of their music. So the score should be reflective of that. Or if it's somebody that you are constantly throughout the routine making marks that said, hey, they were taking advantage of this music and they were using it throughout the entire routine, then their score should be much higher. And if you go through the rule book in section 2 of Article 2, subsection B, which says using the music, you can look back and see the guidelines that it suggests. So I'm going to move on. That between skipping to the beat and using the music, that makes up their 15% for generally the use of music. Okay? Any questions about that?
I have a question, Tyler. Since it's 15%, it's not a large part of their score. One of the things that we were kind of counseled in is to really hit the crescendos more, or hit the major accents, making sure that the major accents that we could hit versus trying to focus on every beat. Would you say that would be
So, here's the thing. I know it doesn't sound like a huge part of their score, but 15% is the largest single chunk that any of the judges give out. So, for example, the required elements judges, through all the required elements that are there, that's only worth 10%. And, all the movement and all the form and execution and wow factor and all those other things are worth less than the music. So I hear what I think that you have a good idea, and I think that by saying we're going to focus on hitting the accents and hitting the crescendos and all that stuff, that you're actually going to do a lot better than you think you are. You're saying you feel like you might need to ignore some parts of it, but I think that if you do it that way, it'll score really well.
I'm just asking because if you get to a part of your music where you're like, you know what, we were planning on doing this. It's wondering if every beat, like you talked about, to be concerned about. And I know when our kids pick music for the Last World, we were just said, make sure you hit the accents. That's an easy score from the judges if they see you hit the majority of the accents versus every beat, because that was our.
And yeah, that's that 7.5%. Focusing on the using the music and not so much focusing on the skipping to the beat half of it. So what you're basically doing there is saying that you really want to focus on that second 7.5%, which is still a big portion of their score, and that you're going to be essentially okay with taking a little bit of a hit on the skipping to the beat portion, because in that section, remember, they're looking at a percentage of the time. So I'm not saying that you're not jumping to the beat at all through the entire thing, but that maybe you're only jumping to the beat like half the time. Let's say that,
maybe
and that.
Or even
what's that?
Of the time. Wait, even 3/4 of the time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So even 3/4 of the time, and so what you're giving up about what is that, like 1.75? Or 1.5, I think it's 1.5, something like that. You're giving up a 1.5, or more, 1.75. Yeah, that sounds better. 1.75 points out of their total of 100. Would be what you're giving up if they're only jumping 3/4 of the time instead of jumping all the time to the beat of the music. So, yeah, it's something that it's negligible, but at the same time, I think that that's how a lot of U.S. jumpers approached the tournament 2 years ago and just said, you know what, our difficulty is going to be fine, and, we'll do really well on difficulty, and we'll just ignore some of the presentation stuff. And although this is a slightly different approach, you're not saying you're going to ignore it, but I think that some jumpers were shocked 2 years ago when they saw, hey, okay, I had a decent difficulty score, but then my creativity or my presentation half was like I got an 8 out of 250, and someone else got, 180 out of 250, and it doesn't really matter what my difficulty score was because they just blew me out of the water.
And that's why I'm asking.
So I just don't want
you to. So change that mindset to really trying to get to the beat of the music. That means we need to change our music.
Well, it just, I'm not saying that in particular. What I am saying is that it's worth investing a little bit of time into. I mean, if there's, the way I would look at it is like I put things on a scale of, what's worth the most. And difficulty is still worth the most. Okay, it's still worth 50% of your score. But then the very next thing after difficulty, as far as worth the most, is music. It's 15%. And, so it's not the highest priority, but it's certainly close.
Second highest priority.
Right, it should be. It should be, I think.
Okay, that really helps out, because the first thing they need to start off with, from what I understand, is choosing their music versus choosing
I would
the
say
moves
yes.
and then adding the music. So if we're going to choose music, we need to choose music.
I think they should choose their music first. Yeah, because at least that way they can, have a little bit of a framework, like they've got something to work within. They know what the music is, and they know where the accents need to be, and they can start planning out some of these, cool, creative, choreographical elements.
So that helps explain some of our scores and why we probably could have done a bit better.
Yes.
We just said, oh, well, we'll sacrifice a little bit for the
We'll just
difficult
turn on the music. Yeah, but we were sacrificing a lot more than I think we realized. But yeah, so hopefully that answers that. I'm going to move on into the next portion if everybody else is good. Okay. So after we talk about using the music, now we're into the next section, movement. So it's still the presentation judge that's focused on movement, but it's a completely separate category that they're going to get a score within. They're still going to get a score from 0 to 10 for movement. But movement is only worth 5% of their total score. I say only worth 5%, but if you think about it in USA Jump Rope, required elements is worth 1 point from our head judge, which is 10%, and movement is one of the required elements, so that's only 2% of our total score. 2% is from movement in USA Jump Rope. And here at FISAC, 5%. So it's worth 2.5 times as much. So movement becomes more important in FISAC than it was in USA Jump Rope. I think that this is good for us though, because it's something we're used to, and quite honestly, it's something that we're very familiar with, and this should be an easy 5% of the score to get for our athletes. And instead of USA Jump Rope the way where we just separate the floor into 4 quadrants and say they have to hit each one of the quadrants outside of a 3-foot radius from the middle of the floor, and then they'll get credit for the spatial dynamics. In FISAC, what they're doing is they're looking at the length of the routine, and then they're looking for the score to reflect the percentage of that time that the athlete was moving. Okay? So if you want to get a 10 out of 10 for movement, it doesn't mean that you have to be moving all the time. There are some skills that you cannot move on, and I get that. But the idea is that there's this continuous movement throughout the routine. Whether or not it means that you're moving during this particular skill, it means that if there's an opportunity for you to move, you're moving. And it doesn't even specify where you have to be moving to. And I think that perhaps maybe eventually it'll need to be a little bit more specific about that. But for right now, it doesn't say where you have to move. It doesn't say you have to change quadrants. It doesn't say you have to hit all 4 corners or whatever. Now, I wouldn't suggest staying in one spot the entire time and just moving around within like a little small circle for the entire routine. That's not what I'm saying. I would not recommend that. What I would recommend is making it very easy for the judges to recognize that you are moving. Remember that some of these judges are going to be very, very well trained. Some other judges may not be as well trained. They may not be as practiced, or they may interpret the rules slightly differently. And while my job as a judge trainer is to try to make sure everyone interprets the rules the same, I can't promise that that's the way it's going to be at the tournament. So I would just make sure that for movement, that we're telling our jumpers that their movement score, that 5% of their score, is going to be given to them based on how much throughout their routine are they moving. Are they moving just a little bit? Are they moving the whole time? Are they moving, across the floor? Although that's not written in there, it only gives us 1 sentence, or 2 sentences really, but a very small amount of information about movement. It's still worth 5% of their score. I mean, and that's big. Any questions about movement? Oh. Okay. Next up, the judge is also responsible for form of the body and execution. This is 10% of their total score. This is a big one, right? And I'm glad this one is worth 10% this year. It did not always used to be worth 10%. And I think it needs to be worth 10% because, I mean, after all, we're supposed to be making these skills look good. That's a huge part of our score in USA Jump Rope, and I want to make sure that our athletes understand that we're making it a big deal in FISAC, okay? I had to fight really hard to make sure that this got increased. The value of this portion was increased. it says a deduction will be made for every skill that's not performed well or performed with a lack of good posture. Okay? And then it goes on specifically to say, like jumping with your head down all the time and skipping style. This is huge because I don't know about you guys, but I saw a ton of routines at Worlds in 2012 where people, I think they didn't even know that they were performing for judges. They were staring at the ground the entire time, and it's like I wasn't even there as a judge. I judged freestyle at Worlds 2012, and it was like, hello, do these people know that they're being judged right now? Are they going to look up at me? Are they going to acknowledge the fact that I've been sitting here all day watching freestyle routines? And sometimes, no, they didn't. But now, since it's written in there that we can deduct for that, they better look up at me because otherwise they're going to lose points, and quite a bit of points. This is worth 10% of their overall score. So if I see a jumper that is doing a skill, with their head down, or similar to USA Jump Rope, if I see them with their backs to the judges for an extended period of time where it's unnecessary. Now, some jumpers are going to put their back to you so they can make sure that you see they're doing a TS switch cross. Some of those things are necessary. Others are not. If they're doing frogs or mule kicks, donkey kicks, with their legs, flailing all over the place and it looks terrible, or they're doing a tumbling skill where it just looks like they're going to hurt themselves, or if they're doing multiple unders where they're landing with their knees really bent, or their butt touching the ground pretty much, or any of that stuff, that's just not good posture. That's not the way the skill is supposed to be executed. And when the presentation judge sees this, they're going to make a mark on their paper to take off from form of the body and execution. And throughout the whole routine, you're making marks, and all the marks you're making are for bad execution. And then at the end, you're kind of taking away from your 10 out of 10. And you have to. It doesn't say specifically that each mark is takes off half a point or whatever. Some of it might be so bad that it needs to take off more than that. Remember, in FISAC we can give half points, so we can give like a 9.5 for something, or a 9. You can't give like a 9.3. But if you started with a 10 out of 10, and if you told yourself that each one of those marks was going to take off half a point, then that's fine. Maybe you see something that's so bad it needs to take off a whole point, and that's fine too. Just be consistent with what you're doing. I think that's just generally a good idea across the board. So anytime you see something, whether it's something about their facial expression that you don't like, or whether it's something about the way they did the skill that you don't like, you are allowed to mark off for that, and that takes away from their form of the body and execution, which is worth 10% of their overall score. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Next, Section 5 of Article Presentation Judge talks about overall impression. Now this one is, kind of a catch-all. It is worth 10% of their total score, and it allows the presentation judge to mark or give credit for things that don't fit into other categories. Okay? Remember, we've already talked about the music and the movement and the form of the body and execution, but there's other stuff about routines that's worth recognizing, and here's where you recognize it. It goes on and it asks a lot of questions of the judges, which I'll read out now, and consider some of these and what your answers might be if you were watching a routine. It asks you, what was your overall impression of the routine? That's kind of like, okay, once it's all done, generally, was it good or bad? Would you watch it again? Did the routine keep you engaged? Were you excited to watch it? Or were you bored? Did you see a lot of creative and artistic skills? This is very similar to what we ask our judges in USA Jump Rope, they evaluate quality of presentation, and then they evaluate creativity. This is that creativity part. Were there any special, original, or unique moves? This is very similar to the last thing it just asked you. I think it kind of falls into the same category as that creativity score from USA Jump Rope. Was the routine spectacular or stunning? Okay, I mean, yeah, we're asking the same questions over and over. This kind of falls back in with that first question about overall impression of the routine. I mean, if it leaves you with, like, your jaw hanging open, or like just, oh, that blew my mind, or whatever, that's probably worth some extra points from an overall impression standpoint. Was the audience entertained? This one, I'm a little questionable on this one, because let's say you're from the United States, and last time in 2012, I mean, we were here in the U.S. We had a ton of people at Worlds. Just because the audience is screaming really loud, I don't necessarily know that should be worth points. But my opinion on that is not so much important as the actual rule book. So the rule book says, was the audience entertained? And I guess you can gauge that however you like. But I think we generally, as coaches or judges, you have the ability to gauge the audience as to whether or not they're just screaming for somebody because they're screaming for them, or is the audience reacting to something that was really cool. And if you hear the audience reacting to stuff that's really cool, hopefully you are also reacting to something that's really cool. Or you could at least use the audience as kind of like an indicator that you should be writing something down. So I don't think you necessarily have to ask yourself, what would the audience have scored this routine? If they wanted the audience to judge the routine, they would have given the audience scorecards, okay? But they didn't. So it should be you gauging what the audience felt like. I'm going to just stick with that. And the last one, it says, would you keep watching this routine even if you didn't have to? And as as harsh as that sounds, I really think it's a good indicator of what your feeling about the routine is. I mean, I think we've all sat through a panel of 50 routines in the whatever age group that has 50 routines in it, and we've sat there and we've been on the 45th routine and sitting there going, oh my gosh, like I can barely stay awake right now, even though we do stay awake because that's what we're supposed to do. But would you, if everything was turned off, if it wasn't a competition and you weren't judging, would you watch it? Would you stick around and watch this routine if they started doing it again somewhere else? And I think if you answer yes, that you would watch it even if you didn't have to, that says something about the entertainment value of their routine, and they should be rewarded for that. So again, there are lots of different little things that kind of stick out in overall impression, and you can choose to highlight one or more of those categories that you think are particularly useful, or maybe it changes throughout your day. Maybe you have certain things that look good and interesting to you, and other things that stand out as being not so good. As long as you make marks for them and you can turn those marks into a score, that's what's going to count for your overall impression, which is 10% of their score. Anybody? I think that maybe that deserves a little bit of discussion, if anybody has anything to say about that. Anyone? Bueller? No one's going to tell me anything about that? Come on, guys. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just came onto my computer, so I was just looking that up.
You're trying to get that set up?
Yeah, to I can get it because I just got home. So.
Okay.
But
you should just be able to follow your email through.
Okay. If I have questions,
yeah.
I will.
Anyway.
Oh, right.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not requiring anyone to say anything, but I thought maybe. Okay, if you understand it, that's great, and then we'll just move on. The next portion, well, I mean, let me just, I guess, as a circle back, that covers the presentation, Judge, okay? I mean, I talked about 4 different things. I talked about use of music, movement, form of the body and execution, and overall impression, and that covers single rope presentation. Now, I am going to jump down to Article 2 of the double Dutch portion. Let's see. Article 2, double Dutch presentation, is on page. And I wanted to show you that there is a different category in here that you also have to consider, which means that the scores are a little bit shifted. In double Dutch presentation, it's still worth 40%. Total score is 40%.
Excuse me, Tyler, what page are you on?
18.
Thank you.
Bottom of page 18. You got me?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. So it says that presentation judging for double Dutch freestyle is also 40%. And it says you're still responsible for judging the use of music and the accents. That's still 15%. The movement, instead of 5%, is now 2.5% for movement. Okay? Form of the body, and see how this changed. Form of the body / rope and execution. Instead of 10%, it's now worth 7.5%. They took a little bit away. And the reason they took that away is so they could make room for the next category. Interaction is worth 5% in double Dutch. Now, this could be interaction between the jumpers and the turners if it's a double Dutch single freestyle, you know, like intricate switches and things like that. Or it could also be interaction between the jumpers themselves if it happens to be a double Dutch pairs freestyle. So interaction there, 5%. It's worth 5%. And then, again, the overall impression entertainment value is still worth 10%. So we've already covered judging the use of music, so I'm going to skip past that. I'm on page 19 now. I skipped over section 2, which is the movement, because we've already talked about movement. Section 3, form of the body / rope and execution. I've already covered that as far as the body, form of the body and execution, but I will talk about the form of the rope. So it says a deduction will be made for every skill that's not performed well. It says not well performed, but I don't know if that's correct. Or lack of good posture. We've already talked about that. And here we go, skipping style. And then it says, or when the rope does not turn in a fluent way. Maybe a fluid way. Doesn't matter. When the rope doesn't turn correctly. I'll just say that. So like this would be like one of those times where the rope catches on somebody. It doesn't cause a mistake, but it just makes the rope kind of go all wonky. I mean, I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Sometimes in double Dutch, the turners are able to save mistakes, right? And that's really good because mistakes in FISAC are worth like 1 billion points. So you don't want to do mistakes. But if you can save the mistake, that's fantastic. Sometimes, though, it still takes away from the overall enjoyment factor of the routine. And specifically, it's not as good as if somebody else did the exact same skill and didn't have their rope look like that. Even though it's very exciting when somebody saves a miss, right? Everybody goes crazy. And probably it's going to add something to their was the audience entertained portion of their score. They'll probably actually get points somewhere because they were able to save that mistake. But here is one spot where they should lose points, because if someone else does the exact same skill and they do it without having to save a mistake, they should get a higher score because they did it right off the bat. I think that makes sense. And so if you see the rope looking all crazy or flopping over the side or wonky or whatever, you make a note of it, and it takes off from that section. The overall impression I've talked about, so I'm not going to focus on that again. The last section, section 5 on page 19, says interaction is worth 5%. It goes on to say, is the routine made up of each jumper doing just a few individual skills, or is there interaction between the skippers? Interaction can be all the skippers doing fancy feet, easy or complicated switches, giant wheel, turner interaction with the skippers, interaction between the jumpers, dynamic interaction like subway or a frog over a push-up or something. Those are all different examples of the same thing. They all would be counted for interaction, in addition to the fact that they'd be counted as difficulty. So don't worry, they'll also get difficulty credit for it. But you, as a presentation judge, you're making a note of any time that something is done in that double Dutch routine where something requires more than one person. Now, I know that that might be misleading because double Dutch in general requires 3 people. So they're not going to get interaction credit for that. But what I specifically meant was when completing a skill in the double Dutch ropes or completing a turner involvement requires that there are more than one person involved or taking part of that specific skill. Okay? It's impossible to do a frog over a push-up with one person because you can't be the frog and the push-up. Okay? You have to have 2 people doing each skill, one person doing a push-up, one person doing a frog, and they have to be one over the other in order for it to be a frog over a push-up. Okay? You can't do a giant wheel switch unless somebody takes the handle from one of the turners and turns it into a wheel. Okay, so those types of things are interaction things. You can't do a leapfrog unless you have someone to leapfrog over. All examples of interaction skills, and when you see those, you make a note on your paper, interaction, and at the end of the routine, you look at them and you say, okay, well, if they didn't interact at all, maybe they get a 0. If they interacted several times and those interactions were complicated, then you might give them a really high score, or somewhere in the middle. Maybe they either had only a few interactions, or the interactions were very simple, or maybe they had several interactions, all of which were very simple. They might be somewhere in the middle there. Any questions about interaction and how the score should be reflected? Nope?
Nope, we're good.
All right. Okay, so that's what the presentation judge is responsible for. What I did want to tell you guys is that I have a YouTube video online. It is, I'll email the link out later, but it's a YouTube video on FISAC presentation judging. And it's, I think, let's see, I believe that video, yeah, it's 36 minutes long, and it's me going over FISAC presentation judging, similarly to what we just did now, but maybe in a little bit more detail. I might have left some stuff out, I don't know. So you can go, I'll email that out, and you can go check back on that. That's a resource that's available. And Peter also has a couple of presentation practice videos up on YouTube, and I'm going to try to just compile a list of judging videos that are out there and send them out to everybody because I want to have to recreate something that's already been done. Perfect. Cover would be the required elements judge. Now this has changed a lot, so it's worth talking about. I'm back on page 16, handbook. Article 3, single rope required elements. Now, in the past, it's always said stuff like, you have to do 4 clearly separated sets of multiples, 2 of which have to be triples or faster. Yeah, and then it says like 4 clearly separated sets of crossing skills, and 3 different gymnastics, and 4 power skills, 2 of which have to be complicated power skills. Anyway, it was very confusing. There wasn't really any rhyme or reason to the required elements section, and as a matter of fact, they had to have 2 different required elements judges to get it done, which I was just like, that's just crazy. We do not need 2 sets of required elements judges to tell me whether or not somebody did required elements. And in USA Jump Rope, we do it with 1 judge. 1 head judge sits and has a checklist and says they did rope manipulation at an intermediate level or they didn't. They did multiples, they did inversion displacement, whatever. So I spoke a lot about how our head judge works to the FISAC Rules Committee, and they seem to like it. They seem to like the idea that this could be a checklist, and that they liked the idea of having 2, because I said that would be an easy number to keep between all the different required elements, and that they seemed happy with it, and so I didn't really want to argue at that point. I said, you know what? I've got my point in, and we'll just roll with it from there. So what they've done is they've changed all of the required elements so that there needs to be 2 of everything, okay, which makes it really easy for jumpers to remember. There are 6 different required elements, and I'm going to tell you what they are. The first is multiples. Nope. Sorry. The first is triples. Crosses. I've just said that 3 times. Sorry. Okay, I see it now, and I'm confident the first required element is crosses. Good. Okay. So it says 2 clearly separated sets of 4 different crosses. I'll go into more detail about that in a moment. The next one says 2 clearly separated sets of triples or faster. The next one, 2 different gymnastics. The next one says 2 different power skills. The next one says 2 times at least 4 skills done backwards. So it's a little bit different than what it says clearly separated sets. I'll explain it in more detail in a second. But twice in your routine, you have to do skills backwards. And you also have 2 releases. Now, when all of this is done, basically they look down and they give you a point for each one of those. So in single rope, there are 12 required elements points. 6 required elements, and you can get up to 2 points for each one. So there's 12 total points. If you get 12 out of 12, that's 10% of your score. Okay? And their scores in FISAC are out of 500 overall points. So you can imagine, if you get 12 out of 12 required elements, you're going to get 50 points. That's just given to you. Okay? You don't have to do anything else. You get those points. No one can take them away from you. If you get less than 12 out of 12, your score out of 50 will reflect the required elements that you did complete. Obviously, if you do 0 out of 12, well, first of all, I think it's actually probably really hard to get 0 out of 12 because you got to do something in your routine. Chances are you'd get a required element for at least one of them. So that's your required elements points, and it's worth says in pairs and team freestyle there's an additional required element. It's pairs interaction. So pairs interaction is required. It doesn't say how hard the pairs interactions have to be, but it says that there need to be 2 clearly separated, different pairs interactions. Okay, so each of those words is important. Clearly separated means that, and let me just put a big star in front of this for everybody. This is really important. Please pay attention to what I'm about to say. Clearly separated means whatever you're doing, let's call it a pairs interaction, has to be separated from any other pairs interaction by at least 3 skills that are not pairs interaction. I'm going to say that again. In order to get credit for having 2 different pairs interactions, if I do my first pairs interaction and I do my second pairs interaction right after it, I will not get credit for having 2 different ones. I'll get credit for having 1, okay? Because they weren't separated. Now, if I do my first pairs interaction and then I do another skill and then I do my second pairs interaction, I still will not get credit for having two clearly separated pairs interactions because they were separated by only one skill. In order to get credit for it, I have to do my first pairs interaction. Then I have to do three other skills. It doesn't matter what those skills are, as long as none of those skills are pairs interaction skills. I do three more skills. Maybe I do cross, I do a TJ, and I do a frog. Okay? Then, after I do that, now I've done three skills which are not pairs interactions, I do another pairs interaction. Then I will get credit for having done two clearly separated different pairs interactions. Does that make sense to everybody?
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, can I give a scenario and see if
Yes.
this works? Okay, so let's say the pairs are doing a multiple pairs interaction. So they do a multiple pairs interaction. If they separate and they still do multiples, that's still not considered. If they do their separated set and then they separate and still do multiples and then go back into something else, that's still considered one. That's not considered a separation unless they do another skill set.
No. It is a separation. Here's the thing. You can get credit. This is important too, I guess. You can get credit for more than one required element at the same time. In your example, Renee, you have a pairs interaction that's doing triple unders or faster, let's say. Let's say that I'm going to scoop you. It's a pairs routine, and I'm going to scoop you while I do an EK. All right?
Right.
So that's the first skill in our set. And then as soon as so the very first thing they write down is the P or the I don't know, for interaction. Maybe they write down an I for interaction. They write down an I right away because I did that. Now, without stopping, we both continue and do three other multiples. Okay? So after I scoop you in the EK, we do side cross open, TJ, and triple under TS. Okay? But we do all those separate, like not as a pairs interaction.
Right.
So we did our first pairs interaction, we did three more multiples afterwards, and then we come back after our fourth multiple and do a regular, I scoop you while you do a frog, okay?
Okay.
We will get credit for the first pairs interaction. We will also get credit for a set of multiples, which are triples or faster, okay, because we did 4 in a row.
Okay.
And we will get credit for the second pairs interaction because the two pairs interactions were separated by three skills that weren't pairs interactions, which happened to be a multiple under. They don't care that the first pairs interaction was also a multiple. What actually benefits the jumper is the fact that the first one was a multiple actually makes the 4 multiples in a row. So if the first one wasn't a multiple and then we did if the first pairs interaction was not a multiple, and then we did 3 multiples apart, then we wouldn't get credit for a set of multiples because the set of multiples has to be 4 different triples or faster.
Okay.
So you see how by actually doing it that way, we get credit for 2 pairs interactions and a set of multiples. So that's actually really good for us.
Okay, so what would be kind of neat is to come up with a sheet that we can just fill in the blank kind of thing when we put this together.
Well, and that's what I do for my kids. Honestly, I write out all the different things, and I write it out and say, just on like an Excel spreadsheet, and say, look, I need 2 sets of crossing skills, and I make them write their sets of crossing skills. I need 2 sets of multiple skills. I need 2 gymnastic skills. I need 2 powers. I need 2 times 4 skills done backwards, and I need 2 releases. And they write it all down, the ones that they want to do, looking at the difficulty of each one and writing down the hardest ones that they're able to do. And then they put it together. Then they start constructing it, and then they find out that sometimes that some of them can overlap. Or they say, oh, look, I can't do this set of multiples right next to this set of multiples because it has to be separated by 3 skills. So let me choose one of these gymnastics, one of these powers, and a release that I can put in between so that it's clearly separated, and then I can do my other set of multiples.
But the separation can also be something that if you put into the 4th one, it's still considered a separation as long as it's...
Correct. And so I just kind of highlight all those rules for them and set it up more like a game, that to construct a routine that fits the requirements.
Okay.
And my kids seem to get it. Anyway, so I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about some of these things that need more explanation. I don't think the gymnastics needs to be explained anymore. All they have to do is 2 different gymnastics. The power skills, the only thing that's worth noting about that is that, remember in FISAC, they get credit for going into a power skill and coming out of a power skill. Those are potentially 2 different sets of credit. But when it says 2 different powers, it does not mean going into and coming out is considered 2 skills. It means that the whole thing, going into a power skill and coming out of a power skill, counts as one of your powers. And then you have to do another one. Now, for USA Jump Rope jumpers, for all athletes, this is going to be a given. Okay, we don't have any routines that compete at regionals and nationals that don't have at least 2. Most of ours have an entire whole segment. That's fine. If you want to do 10 power skills, that's perfectly okay. They're not going to take points away for doing more than what they ask for. But you have to do at least 2 different powers. Okay, and it does say different. So if you just do a push-up and then later in the routine you do another push-up, that's not 2 different ones. Okay. Now, it would be different if you did a push-up and then a push-up to an AS. Those are 2 different power skills. But to be 100% just completely obvious to them, you would want to do something like a push-up and a frog, or a split and a crab, or, whatever. Just make it very obvious that, hey, I'm supposed to do 2 different ones. Here I go, 2 different ones. That's that. The 2 releases, again, don't need much explanation. I think that any releases, it could be some of those hanging releases, it could be the floating releases, it could be a mic release, it could be a 2-handle release, it could be a release that goes down on the ground and then you pop it back up, it could be a snake release, it could be anything. They don't care which kinds of releases you're doing. They just care that you do 2 different ones. And ultimately, it will help their score if those releases are a little bit harder. But as far as a required element standpoint, it just has to be 2 releases. Nothing else matters. Okay, so the other things that need explanation would be the backwards, the multiples, and the crossing skills. I'm going to start with the backwards ones because that's the one that's least like the others. It says that 2 times in your routine, you have to have at least 4 skills done backwards. But it does not say that they have to be a set of skills. When it talks about a set of skills, like the clearly separated sets of crosses or whatever, that's when it has to be 4 skills in a row, no jumps in between. Okay? That makes it a set. Think of it like a combination from our density judges in USA Jump Rope. Remember, a set of 5 skills that's not broken apart by a density break, like an isolated jump or something. That is not what it's talking about when it talks about these backwards skills here. It just means that you start jumping backwards, you can do your first skill, you can take a couple of jumps backwards, do your second backward skill, you can take a couple of more jumps, you can do another backward skill and take 10 more jumps, and then do your 4th backward skill. As long as all 4 of them stay backwards, as long as you don't go forwards in between. Does everybody get that? Does that make sense? As long as you don't go forwards in between the backward skills, it still counts as being backwards. Even if you need to take some jumps, even if they're skills from different elements or whatever, it doesn't really make a difference. Yeah, I know. Thank you. Okay, so the backward skills, you do it once in your routine, and then you do it again later on in your routine. What does have to be the case is that those 2 sets of backward skills, they do have to be clearly separated, okay? Even though it does not say that in there, it should be. So if I do 4 backward skills, and then I switch the rope back to forwards, and I only complete 1 skill forwards, and then I go back to backwards, I don't think they're going to give you credit for your second set of backward skills because you didn't stay forwards long enough to, you have to do 3 skills forwards in order for them to then say, okay, now you can go backwards again and it'll count. Does that make sense?
I have a question on your separating skills.
Yeah.
But say a pairs routine, and
Sure.
they're doing a group of separating skills, separating two partner interactions. Say there's 3 tricks that the pairs perform, but there's a miss on one of those tricks. Is that considered enough separating skills, even though one was not completed?
Yes. I'm going to say yes. And here's why. Because the intent of having a separating skill there, even if both pairs, if they both miss, let's say that the skills that we're going to separate it were cross and then a TJ and then a frog, and we both miss on the TJ, we still attempted the skill. So even though it's going to take away from our score, obviously, because we both missed, but having attempted that skill means that it was there in essence, right? I mean, the skill is there. Even if we didn't complete it, it was a skill that was there for the purpose of separating 2 other things. I'm going to give you credit for how many skills you tried to get done. Even if one of them doesn't do it, you're not going to get credit from a difficulty standpoint as having completed that skill, but the skill was there nonetheless, I guess, is my approach to it. And I think that's what I would expect out of everybody else as well. I can clarify it with Peter if that would make everybody feel better. But from me and what I understand about the intent behind that rule should be that would be fine, even if there's a mistake. Obviously, we don't want to have mistakes. But if there is one, it's not going to mean you have to do another skill. Otherwise, it doesn't separate your sets.
Correct. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. So moving on from the 2 times backwards, we go into the other things that do need to be clearly separated sets. The first one is crosses. It says 2 clearly separated sets of at least 4 different crosses, and then it goes on to say all of which are more difficult than the basic crisscross. Okay, so first of all of them have to be harder than the basic crisscross in order to get credit for doing a set of crosses. Okay, it also then goes on to say that it can be in single bounce or multiples, but not combined. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because it means that if you're going to do, I guess it's not that tricky if you're doing single bounce. If you're doing it in single bounce, then it doesn't really matter because we know that, okay, you got to just do 4 different crosses that are all harder than a basic crisscross. You go TS, AS, CL, caboose, okay? Or toad, Kruger, inverse toad, elephant toad. Those are 4 different crosses, and actually Kruger does count as a cross for the purposes of FISAC. So, but yeah, that's easy to see. They're all crossing skills. They're all harder than a basic crisscross, and it's all in single bounce. They're all done without jumps in between. Done. You get a check mark. But in multiples, I even had this misunderstanding for a while, that the crossing skills that you're doing in multiples, you don't get credit for multiples and crosses unless all of the crossing skills you're doing in the multiples have crosses that are harder than a basic cross. So like side cross open as a triple under, that's not going to give you credit for a crossing skill because it's not harder than a basic crisscross. Now, I would argue with that and say, yes, a side cross open is harder than a basic crisscross, but what it means is that the crossing element of that skill is not harder than a basic crisscross. So the only way to do a set of multiples that's also going to give you credit for crosses is if it's 4, let's say it's 4 triple unders, all of which are under the leg or behind the back triples. So I do a triple under TJ, triple under inverse TJ, triple under Jami, triple under AS. That would give me credit for 4 multiples, they're all triples or faster, and 4 crosses that are harder than a basic cross. Okay? But if I do TJ, inverse TJ, Jami, and then side cross cross, that's not going to give me credit for a set of crosses. I'll still get credit for a set of multiples, but I won't get credit for the set of crosses because not all of them were harder than a basic crisscross. Any questions about that?
Yeah, Tyler, I'd have one. So,
Okay.
So in the multiples, or in the crosses,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, where it says that you can't combine, am I reading it right that you can't combine the single bounce and the multiples to get credit for the crosses?
Right. So like if I did toad...
As the opening skill.
Wait, go again.
So like take that same set of multiples with crosses that you were talking about, but replace the first skill with just a TS instead of a multiple with the cross. Instead of...
Then no, you wouldn't get credit for anything.
You wouldn't get credit for it. Not even...
You wouldn't get credit for anything. Not multiples or crosses, because you did a TS and then a TJ and then an inverse TJ and then a triple under AS. Okay? You didn't do 4 triples in a row, and you also didn't do either 4 crosses in single bounce or 4 crosses in multiples in a row. You can't do both.
So you can't mix the single bounce and the multiples regarding crosses.
Not for the same set. It can be mixed throughout your routine. Like, you could do one set of crosses that are in single bounce, and later on in your routine you could do a different set of crosses that are all in multiples, but you can't just go jumbling them up in the same set. Wait, let me rephrase that. You can do whatever you want, but you won't get credit for it. Okay? You will get credit for it from a difficulty standpoint all day long. Okay? So I'm not trying to say that you're not going to get anything for it. But as far as getting required element credit for a clearly separated set of 4 different crosses, number 1, they have to all be harder than basic crisscross. And number 2, they have to be either in single bounce or multiples.
Okay.
But you cannot combine them.
Multiples have to be triple.
Well, no, actually. This is another little loophole in here. It says that it has to be in single bounce or multiples. It does not specify that those multiples have to be triples or faster. Now, if you want to get credit for a set of multiples, those multiples have to be triples or faster. But let's say that you wanted to do double under TS, double under AS, double under CL, double under Toad. Okay? You would get credit for a clearly separated set of 4 different crosses. You would not get credit for multiples because those multiples weren't triples or faster. But all of the crosses that you did were in multiples, and they were harder than basic cross, so they are obligated to give you credit for it. And you'll get difficulty credit for it as well. But if you're able to do all those skills as double unders, I would probably, as a coach, suggest to the jumper that they try them as triple unders, because if they could do them as triple unders, then not only would they get credit for the set of crosses, but they'd also get credit for the set of multiples, which would just be, one less thing they have to do. But if the jumper was not capable of doing them as triples and they wanted to do them as doubles, because they would be worth quite a bit as double unders from a difficulty standpoint, then they certainly could do that. And that might be a choice that they decide to make, and they would still get credit for it, because it just says it has to be single bounce or multiples. It doesn't specify how many times it has to go into the feet. Does that answer your question?
It does. For some reason, the crosses is the one that gives me the most trouble.
Well, I think that generally it gives a lot of people a little bit of frustration, because especially when they realize that, like, a lot of what they tend to do to make certain skills harder, for example, how do you make a MIC release harder? Well, you catch it in a TS or an AS or a CL or something. And what people run into is they run into a challenge with separating their sets of crosses, because a lot of times if they're making a power skill harder, they put a cross coming out of the power skill. Or to make a gymnastics skill harder, they do a TJ while they're doing a backflip, or anything. And when they're doing their backward skills, they do them as crossing skills. When they do their dance step even, they do that with crossing skills. So they find it difficult to be able to separate their crossing skills from other crossing skills by at least 3 skills that aren't crossing skills. So, that's going to be, I think, the challenge for most people, is finding 3 skills that you can put in a row that aren't crossing skills that are going to separate your sections of crosses. And so I know a lot of jumpers like to just be able to get that done and out of the way right up front. You know, they want to be able to do a set of crossing skills and then do 3 other skills that aren't crossing skills and then come right back and do another set of crossing skills, and then they can use crosses however they want for the rest of the routine, but they know they've already got credit for their required elements portion of the crosses.
Tyler, I had a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a quick question about skills. I haven't seen it yet, but maybe, I don't know if you said it earlier when I was driving, but you cannot repeat the skill. I mean, you can, but do you get credit for doing different skills and not? Because I remember last time we had to come up with new skills.
Yeah.
We couldn't.
I haven't addressed that yet, but I will get to it. And the rule says that a repeated skill, you're never allowed to give credit to a repeated skill unless that skill is a cross, and only if that cross is done in a different transition. So, for example, if I do an AS by itself, I can get credit for doing an AS. And then later on I do a CL to an AS, I can still get credit for that AS. Later on I do an AS to a push-up, or I do an AS switch cross. I'll still get credit for all those different things. But if I do a TJ, and then I do another TJ later on, I'm probably not going to get credit for the second TJ. You can get credit for doing a skill forwards and backwards, but you can't get credit for doing it on the left and the right. So I could do a left TJ and a right TJ. The right TJ wouldn't count because I've already done the left TJ. Okay. And I could do a forwards TJ and a backwards TJ, and they would both count because you are allowed to do it forwards and backwards.
Okay. I was asking if we're talking about crosses, because that's, if you don't want to do an open cross and you can't do it, because that's what we did open crosses. I mean, side string crosses, and so the mentality is just to change it a bit in our
just a little bit, yep.
Okay.
I mean, as long as you want to get difficulty credit for it. I mean, but I mean, I guess in my brain, I can't really see a point in doing something if you're not getting difficulty credit for it. I would want to make sure I'm getting credit for everything. Okay, and then it goes on after clearly separated sets of crosses. I think we've covered that now, into clearly separated sets of multiples. Okay, so, and in this case, Mom, this is the part where it's very specific about the fact that it's triples or faster. So in this, it has to be 2 clearly separated sets of 4 different triples or faster. So now, you can combine triples and quads. You can do like side-side open, side cross open, side-side open open, side-side open cross. So I did triple, triple, quad, quad. And that's okay. That counts as a set of triple unders or faster. Okay? So they would get credit for that. They can do all triple unders, or they could do all quads, or they could do all quints, or they could do any sort of mixture of those. What they're not allowed to do is to do 3 triple unders and then a double under. Okay? I'm not going to say they're not allowed to do it, but if they did that, they wouldn't get credit for it. So if they go triple, 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 double, triple, 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 double, triple, 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 double, and they could do that all day long, and they're not going to ever get credit for doing a clearly separated set of triples or faster, because they never once in there did 4 triples in a row. Okay? And then even when they did the double unders, they weren't separating their skills by things that aren't multiples. Okay? So it has to be 4 in a row, and all 4 of them have to be triple unders or faster. And then if they want to get credit for another set of multiples, they have to have at least 3 skills in between which aren't multiple unders at all. Doesn't matter if those multiples are triples. So like if I do 4 triples, and then I do a toad, and then I do a frog, and then I do a double under, and then I do a cross, and then I go back into multiples, that's still not going to be clearly separated. Because as soon as I did that double under, it resets the number of skills I have to do in between. Do you see that? I mean, once I do that double under, I now have to do 3 more skills that aren't multiple unders before I can get credit for another set of multiples.
But the double under's not a triple, so...
It doesn't matter. It's a multiple. Because look right there on the page. It says, the second bullet point, at least 3 skills in between that are not a series of multiples. Multiples at all.
Okay, so even though the only thing that counts as a multiple for the set is a triple, a double under doesn't define, it doesn't separate.
Right, because a double under is still a multiple. So it has to be 3 skills in between your multiples, even though the multiples that you're getting credit for have to be triples or faster. The skills that separate those triples or faster from each other can't be multiples at all. So it doesn't matter if it's double unders or triple unders or quads or quints or 7 unders. Anything at all has to be at least 3 skills in between your sets of multiples that are not multiples. And I would tell my jumpers not to even try it. Don't even push it, because I don't know how strict people are going to be on this. I mean, yeah, you're right by saying, okay, maybe some judge is going to look at it and say, well, that wasn't a triple, so it's still okay, or whatever. But somebody might look at it and say, they did a double under push-up in between their sets of multiples, and those might be the only 2 sets of multiples they do in their routine, and because of that, they're going to lose out on a required element point, which is going to translate to being worth like 4 points of their over total score. And, you know, people win and lose by things like 4 points. So I just wouldn't recommend it. I'm not going to tell you 100% for sure that they're going to get deducted for it. What I am going to say is that I'm training people to deduct for that. That I'm telling people that if there's a double under in between, that it should not count. Like, because they've got to separate it with 3 skills that are not multiples. So that's how I'm training people. I would assume that that's how everybody else is training people too. So that's your required elements all the way through. Does anyone have any questions about required elements?
Tyler, just for my own sake, just for clarification.
Oh, Molly's on. Hi, Molly.
Molly's muted.
Oh, did I mute her? Oh, she didn't allow flash permissions. Way to go, Molly. Oh, she typed in there. Hi. But Molly, you didn't allow flash permissions on the presentation. You're not going to ever be able to talk. Does she hear me? Maybe she does. Okay, go ahead, Mom. Oh, yeah, it's okay. It's all right, Molly. Don't worry.
So when we keep talking about these sets and that they are separated by 3 skills, they could be separated by 15 skills. It's at least
sure. Yeah. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter if you want to do, and again, I might do my routine so that it's multiples at the beginning, and then the next time I do multiples isn't until the very end of my routine. It could be 100 skills in between. It doesn't matter in the slightest. What they're looking for, it's at least 3 skills in between. I'm sorry if that was misleading.
I just wanted to
clarify. That's perfectly okay, because I mean, kids are going to ask those questions too, and it's important to understand that it does not matter how many skills are separated by, as long as it's at least 3. And so a lot of times people run into problems because they accidentally threw in a cross that they didn't realize was a cross. Like, for example, they're doing crossing skills, and then they all of a sudden throw in a TJ in between the crossing skills that they're doing. And they might not have realized that the fact that, hey, that even though that was a multiple, the TJ also is a crossing skill that's harder than a basic crisscross. And so if you tried to come out of that TJ and go right back into another set of crossing skills, you're not going to get credit for having a second clearly separated set of crossing skills, because it wasn't, because you did a crossing skill in between. And so sometimes the jumpers find that a little bit difficult to recognize. And as coaches or judges, I think it's really important that that we're able to help them with that. The more we understand it, the better they're going to understand it. And also just to prepare them for this stuff, because, gosh, I had so many people 2012 that were just like speaking about how frustrated they were that certain things weren't the way that they were told. And it was like, well, you know, I think you understood the rules incorrectly, because the rules were written and they were that way, but maybe you just didn't understand them the right way. So I really want to make sure that we have every opportunity to help our athletes and other athletes around the world to understand these rules the way that they're meant to be understood. And I think that, especially with the required elements, it's become a lot easier, because now it's just those two. Everything's two. And I don't know, it just is easier for me to understand, and it's easier for me to explain to my own athletes, which I guess in turn, I presume it'll be easier for everybody to understand. So, if there aren't any other questions about that, I did want to let everybody know that I have what I consider awesome YouTube video on required elements judging. Let's see if I can. Okay. Now I know Renee and David that you guys are on the phone, so you won't be able to see this, but I'm going to show this YouTube video of required elements stuff. And I'll email these links out. Oh, I guess I can't show the YouTube video while I'm recording. Can I? Oh, I can't. I can. No. That's not what I wanted. What is it doing right now? Mom, what is happening?
I don't know.
Can you hear that?
I can see you, I can hear you, and that's all.
You can't hear the person jumping speed?
No, that's on your computer only. I saw it for a few seconds.
Oh, man. That's going to drive me crazy. Okay.
You gotta close it. Go over to YouTube and close it.
It's not. This is going to just keep going, isn't it? It's going to drive me crazy. Okay, well, I'm listening to the world record 3-minute speed right now, just in case anyone's interested. I'll email that video out to everybody, not the 3-minute speed one, but it is out there in case you just want to count the fastest person in the world at 3-minute speed. Happy to have that out there too. But there's a training video that I made about required elements, and it uses Zev Troxler's freestyle routine from Grand Nationals last year.
Now
it's crazy.
I can hear the crowd.
You can still hear that?
Now, yeah.
I can hear it.
I don't know how to stop it. This is crazy. Alright, we might just have to deal with it for the next minute. Hang in there. As soon as it's done, I'm sure it's only a 3-minute speed. It just called 2 minutes, so it's going to get really loud though. In like
Is it the guy from Hong Kong or China?
Yeah, he got 500. Yeah. I think I broke like every rule. I recorded it. I was judging, but I didn't have anybody in my station, so I just like went over and recorded it. Oh well, I have the best video ever. Everyone's getting really excited right now.
Is it on your Facebook?
Tyler, did you hear Renee's question?
Okay, now it's done. I didn't hear anybody ask anything. I'm sorry.
Renee asked a question.
Oh, no, that's
Renee,
okay.
what'd you ask?
Oh, no, that's right. I seen if it was on your Facebook. Because I tried looking at it.
It's on my YouTube channel.
I didn't know.
I'll email it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. It's on there. I'll email all that stuff out because apparently it's not letting me like play YouTube videos and record them at the same time, which whatever. Anyway, the video that I have for required elements judging is it's Zev Troxler's freestyle from Grand Nationals, and I know that his routine was not written to be a FISAC routine, but it actually, his style of jumping fits really well with the FISAC required elements. So I used his routine. I asked his permission and went through his routine, and it's me talking through his routine and pausing it every time he does something that would have been a required element, and it puts it up on the screen and it says, this was a set of crossing skills or whatever. So it's really, really helpful as a required elements judge to go through and watch that. It's a great way to practice, but more importantly, a great tool, an example for you to follow on required elements judging. And then there are several other routines. As a matter of fact, any routine that you want, you could go through and practice using that style of judging, whether or not it's a USA Jumper routine or an AAU freestyle or an old FISAC video or one of Peter's video examples or anything at all. You can practice using this judging technique on anybody. So that's the idea. Any questions about required elements judging before I move on? Nobody? All right. On we move then. The last portion, which I think is the most difficult portion, but also the part that the jumpers care most about, is the judging freestyles in detail, Chapter 3, Article 1, single rope difficulty. It's on page 13. And that's where we'll be starting. So Section 1 is answering Renee's question. This is a whole section dedicated to the repeated skill. Now, it happens to only give two little pieces of information here. And it says, Part A says, a repeated skill is never credited again unless it is a cross, and only if this cross is done in a different combination from the first combination, or if the cross is done as an isolated skill. So, let me share my screen again. Oh, that's not what I want. Close. Share screen. Perfect. Okay, pulling my screen up. Thought it was. Yes, here it is. Okay. So that repeated skill, like I said, unless it's a cross, you're not going to get credit for it again. We talked about the fact that skills done on the left side and the right side, that doesn't really matter. If you do a TJ on the left and then you do a TJ on the right, too bad, you're not getting credit for the second TJ. If you do a forwards TJ and a backwards TJ, those are two different skills. You will get credit for that. If you do a regular TJ and then an inverse TJ, those are two different skills. They're done in different ways. Or if you do an AS by itself, you get credit for that. Now, later in the routine, you do an AS by itself, you're not going to get credit for that again. But if you do an AS earlier in the routine and then later in the routine you do, a combination that has towed to AS, you will get credit for that transition again. Because it's done in a different way. So with crossing skills, as long as it's done in a different combination, then you can get credit for it again. This is a really big deal because a lot of times people think, well, I only know 7 different types of crosses. I do my toad and my Kruger and my caboose, and then I do AS, CL, TS, and EB, and that's it. That's all I got. obviously there are a lot more different types of crosses than that. But let's just assume that those are the only 7 you knew. A jumper might think, well, then I'm extraordinarily limited on what I can do as far as putting together crossing type skills or combinations that are going to be worth any points. And that would be true if you were only allowed to do the skill once. But because they're allowed to repeat it again in a different combination, now that opens it up to thousands upon thousands of different combinations that they could do. They could do the toad to the AS, or they could do a CL to an AS, or they could do a T to an AS, or a Kruger to an AS, or whatever. Kruger to AS, I think, actually would be really hard. But anyway, it's doable. And so the point is that you can repeat that AS as many times as you like, as long as it's in a different combination, done in a different way. So now you've just opened the door. Instead of having 7 possibilities, now you have thousands, tens of thousands. I could do the math, but not going to. The next part says, in part B of section 1, basic footwork is level 1. I don't know why this is in section 1. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the repeated skill. Perhaps that was just a mistake that they made. But just so you know, all basic footwork is level 1. They're not going to give you credit for any of it. Now, I say they don't give you credit. They recognize that it's level 1, and they can mark level 1 on their piece of paper. But there's nowhere on the score sheet for level 1 stuff to go. So they'll mark it, but you don't get credit for it. So footwork, unless it's being done with some other stuff, is not going to be difficulty credit. It doesn't mean that footwork is useless. Footwork certainly could be... Hello? Oh, somebody muted themselves. Okay, I see. Footwork certainly could be done as a way for you to move across the floor, or get credit for something else. I don't know. You might choose to do that. Personally, I would probably choose not to. But that's just for me. Maybe your jumper is different, and they would like to use footwork. But it is just important to note that it's level 1. When typing. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Someone had sent me a note that said they couldn't hear me. Okay. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. Everybody still good?
Yes. Are you still talking about crosses,
Yep.
right? Okay.
Yeah, I am. Okay, good. Then I'll just keep rolling. Okay. So basic footwork, level 1 skill. Section 2 is everything you ever wanted to know about crossing skills. Okay? It's broken down into lots of different areas with lots of different little bits of detail. And so we're going to cover those. Part A says the basic crisscross is a level 1 skill. Easy enough. Anytime they do basic cross, regular cross, nothing else special about it, that's level 1. You can write down level 1 on your paper, or you don't have to, really, because I told you already that level 1, they're not getting credit for level 1 skills. So write it down if you like. Any cross with one or both arms under the leg or behind the back is level 2. This basically means everything else is level 2, for the most part. So EB, toad, AS, CL, inverse toad, elephant toad, a weave, an inverse weave, a TS, a KN, a caboose, a Kruger, caboose with a cross. Those are all level 2 skills. Got it? That's so level 1, basic crisscross. Level 2, everything else. Okay. A backwards cross with both arms, so here's an exception to the everything else is level 2. There are 3 skills that are in crosses that are harder, that are worth more when they're done backwards. Those 3 skills are AS, CL, and TS. That's the behind the back cross, the behind the knees cross, and the behind the knees, behind the back cross. Those are all worth level 3 when they're done backwards. Okay, it says any jump with a squeezed handle is also level 3. This would be like if you squeezed the handle between your, like behind your knee while you did a jump, or you squeezed it under your arm, or whatever. There's lots of skills like that, and all of those are level 3. Okay, so it just kind of created a category for itself and said those are level 3. So forwards AS, level 2. Backwards AS, level 3. Then it says, Part D, as some crosses, such as the caboose cross, inverse toed, and T-toed, are extremely difficult. Oh, it didn't say inverse toed. It said inverse T-toed. Let me just clarify that, because this could make a big difference. Caboose cross, inverse T-toed, and regular T-toed are extremely difficult to jump out of forwards. The jump out of those skills is credited as a level 3. This means that jumping out of a T-toed, a T-toed, you know, is where my wrong hand is on top, if you will. Normally, if I'm going under my left leg, my right arm is on the bottom, and my left hand is on top, in a regular left-toed. But if I do a left-toed where my left hand's on the bottom, my right hand's on top, and my right hand still goes underneath my left leg, that's a T-toed. It's very easy to get into. It's very difficult to jump out of. So jumping out of that skill is a level 3. So I just wanted to clarify that. And it also says, like, jumping out of a caboose cross. So like a Martin caboose is level 3 as well. Martin caboose is when you jump out of a caboose forwards. Okay. The next part says a transition jump, such as changing from one cross under one leg and then switching to a cross under the other leg within one rotation of the rope, is level 4. For example, this needs an example. An inverse toed under the right leg to a regular toed with the left leg would be the first one, the inverse toed, would be level 2. Then the switch, that transition over, would be level 4 because you're switching legs. A Kruger on the left leg to a Kruger on the right. A toad on the left leg to a toad on the right leg. Kruger is hard, toad is hard. Now what's easy is toad to Kruger. Toad on the left leg and Kruger on the right leg. That is not a 2-4. Okay, it's only those more difficult transitions going from one skill to the other, like an inverse toad to a regular toad on different legs that are worth the level 2 and then 4. So that makes sense. You're giving the level 2 for the first skill like you would have done anyway. Then the second skill, because it's more difficult, you're giving level 4. Got it? Any questions about that? No.
Are you going to have this on video?
Am I going to have the skills on video?
Not all the skills, like the T-toed. Because I'm sure the
Yeah.
girls are here. Okay.
So
yeah.
Just to let you, the video that Peter has on levels of difficulty, he's already gone through and done all this stuff. So I'll be sending that video to everybody. But part of the explanation, I think, that I give is maybe a little bit more Americanized. And so the explanation that I'm giving of the skills will be easier to understand than perhaps how he explains it. But the videos are there, so I don't need to redo the video part. But hopefully the explanation will suffice for right now.
And watch the video. How's that?
That's right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
It's highly recommended. Okay. The next part talks about cross-cross combinations. So it says a cross-cross combination increases the level of difficulty by 1 level, such as a toad with your left arm in front to an elephant toad with your right arm in front, going from the toad into an elephant toad. And this is on the same leg. This is not like one of those ones where I said you're switching legs and that makes it a lot more difficult. It becomes a 2 and then a 3. Okay, you get an extra level. The 2 is for the toad. The level 3 is for the elephant toad. And if you did the elephant toad by itself, it would still be level 2, right? If I did a toad and then took a couple of jumps and then did an elephant toad, it would be 2 for the toad, and they do a couple of jumps, and then I get another 2 for the elephant toad. The reason I'm getting a 2 and then a 3 is because I'm doing the toad and then going right into the elephant toad. Okay, so that's 2, 3, and it wants you to switch your hands to switch. If you go a TS with your left arm in front to an AS with your right arm in front, that's a 2, 3. Okay? A combination is only considered a cross-cross if the rope is not jumped in a basic jump between the crosses. So, like when you go toad to AS, think about it for a second. If you do a toad, and then you're going to go into an AS, when you're doing the toad and you're getting ready to jump the AS, you actually have to pull your hands out and you jump over the rope while the rope is not crossed. And then once the rope gets behind your feet, you cross it behind your legs. And that's going to be... that would only be a 2, 2. I know that might seem a little bit confusing right now, but try it or have one of your jumpers try it, and I think you'll be able to see that the rope actually is jumped in a basic jump in between the toad and the AS. And it's hard to see, it's hard to recognize, and I firmly believe that there are judges that are probably going to just give an extra level for any cross-cross transition that are not going to separate between the fact that this one happened to have a basic jump in between and this one didn't. But I also know that there are some judges who are really, really good at picking that out. So, again, I wouldn't bank on the fact that that the judges are going to be poorly trained. I would actually recommend doing it the other way and assume that the judges are going to do everything correctly and don't count on getting an extra level from something like a toad to an AS when in reality you shouldn't be getting an extra level. If you do, it's a nice little bonus, but we shouldn't count on that. Okay, and then it says rules in this paragraph do not apply to a crisscross. So that means that going from a cross straight into a switch cross with a toad does not give you level 1, level 3. It will just give you level 1, level 2. Okay? That make sense? Yes, it does. Perfect.
Hey, Tyler, quick question.
Yes.
What if you went like what if you went like caboose, came out of the caboose and went a backwards CL switch cross and a backwards straight into a backwards AS switch cross? So you have two backwards crosses.
Yeah, but you're switching. So you're saying that in the CL you're going to switch your hands and then you're going to do the same thing in the AS?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so the caboose would be level 2, and then coming out of the caboose, you're not going to get bonus for going into the backwards CL, but the backwards CL is still worth level 3, so you get a level 2 for the caboose, a level 3 for the backwards CL. You'll get a level 5 when you switch cross the backwards CL, which I'll show you in part G here in just a second. So it'll actually be 2 for the caboose, a 3 for the backwards CL, a 5 for the switch cross backwards CL. You'll get a 4 for the AS, I think, right? Either a 3 or a 4, because you're going straight from the CL into the AS, depending on whether you switched your hands or not. So it would be like 2, 3, 5, 4, 5, because you get another 5 when you switch across the AS. At the worst, it would be 2, 3, 5, 3, 5. So the question in my mind is whether or not that first AS is going to get a level 3 or a level 4, and I think that depends on how you present it to the judges. If you can show them, obviously, that you are switching your hands again from the CL into the first AS, then I believe you'll get a level 4. If you cannot show them that, which I also at this point think it doesn't really matter because you're going to get 2 level 5 credits anyway, that I'd be perfectly happy with a 2, 3, 5, 3, 5.
Okay.
But that's the minimum of what their score would be.
Right.
And does everybody... Well, let me explain the next part here. because we kind of jumped ahead just a little bit. I'll explain the next part and then make sure everybody understands it then. The next part says, a cross of the same skill, like what we were just talking about, AS, switch cross AS, increases the difficulty by 2 levels unless those cross is a level 1 cross. So again, the only level 1 cross is a basic crisscross. So anything else, examples of the same skill increasing by 2 are forwards TS to TS, would be a level 2, level 4. Forwards AS to AS, level 2, level 4. CL to CL, 2, 4. Elephant toad to elephant toad, level 2, level 4. They're all level 2, 4. And a backwards TS, TS, or backwards AS, AS, or backwards CL to CL are all level 3 and then 5. Okay? This is like the only level 5 single bounce skill, pretty much, that I can think of. I guess technically like a Dark Side and a Sunny D are still single bounce, even though they're really, really hard. But those are level 5 skills. So even if someone is not capable of doing, quads with leg under crosses or, crazy stuff like that, they can still get high credit for single rope difficulty if they are able to do some of these harder crossing skills. Okay? And I would take full advantage of each and every one of them. Seriously, like I have my kids in the gym practicing their backwards TSs, ASs, and CLs like there's no tomorrow, because those 3 skills are super important to be able to do. And if you can have a full mastery of them, yeah, same thing, David?
Yeah, I've had our kids working. I had almost a homework skill sheet that I gave for our jumpers. And I just, told them that these were extremely important skills that we're going to definitely implement in our routines. And, these are something that everybody needs to work on. And so.
Yeah, you're right, man, because, even for me, like, I hate TSs. Man, I hate them. But, maybe that's just because I use a short handle rope and I grew up not using TSs at all. But even me, I got back to the gym and I was like, look, TSs are becoming really important, and being able to do them forwards and backwards and being able to switch cross them and everything. And so I started drilling myself on them, and now I'm able to come up with lots of really creative ways to use them. So I've always been a fan of the CL, but it's important to recognize that as having access to all 3 of those that are all really high level crossing skills, that we should, as a country, be taking advantage of it. Because I really think that there were tons of European teams that just kind of walked all over us because they had mastery of their crossing skills, and we didn't. And it was almost just a little disappointing just to watch that, because I see how good we are, and I see how awesome our kids are, and they work so hard, and they come up with the most creative and interesting things. But something as simple as not having a sound mastery of these couple of backwards crossing skills could really make the difference for some of our kids. So it's important, and that's why it's in here, and that's why I talked about it. So any questions at all about crossing skills? This would be a great time to bring up any questions, any examples you have, anything at all about crossing skills that you have a question about. Now's the time to ask it.
I do. The question, Courtney was walking by and was listening to you too. So, are we limited to these, or is it any crossing skills that we can do it twice, or is it just mostly the TS, AS, CL, and elephant? This is an example, so we can do any difficult crossing skills 2 times in a row?
I'm sorry, one more. I was reading Molly's question at the same time.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, one more time, Renee.
At G, examples of the same skill increasing by 2 are forwards, TS, AS, CL, elephant, elephant. Are we?
No, you're not limited to that. No, if it's any crossing skill at all, let's say inverse toad. If you go inverse toad to inverse toad, well, actually, that one's really, really tough. But yes, that's going to be level 2, level 4, or toad to toad, or Kruger to Kruger, or anything at all. TS, like it says, a weave to a different, to weave. As long as it's the same skill and you're doing cross, it doesn't matter. It's going to be level 2, level 4. The only ones that are level 3, 5 are those backwards ones. And the reason for that is because those are the only crosses that are level 3 by themselves. It's not specifically that those have to be called level 3, then level 5. It's just the fact that you're getting 2 bonus levels onto whatever the start value of the skill was, and those are the only 3 skills that have a start value of level 3. Those are the only 3 crossing skills. The backwards TS, the backwards AS, and the backwards CL are the only 3 crossing skills that have a starting value of level 3 when they're done backwards. So they're the only ones that can be taken up to level 5 by virtue of this particular point. Yeah. Does that make sense?
And in the Cougars, if you do those twice, they have to be on the same side, not left.
No, they have to be on different sides.
Okay, well that's what I wanted.
Right, if you just do 2 Krugers in a row, no, that's going to be level 2 and then nothing. Because
the only reason I asked that is because earlier we could do one side, but we couldn't do the other. Cross is the only exception.
Yeah,
to that.
But so unless the skill is a cross and unless the skill is done in a different combination. So here, the fact that the Kruger is considered a cross and it's being done in a different combination, the fact that you're going from the Kruger into a Kruger, that's different, and you are allowed to repeat the Kruger, even if it's on a different side.
That was, just okay.
But once you do Kruger to Kruger, later on in the routine, if you do Kruger to Kruger again, you're not going to get credit for that a second time. Molly said, Part F should read cross to a different skill versus G reading cross to the same skill. It helps her remember or differentiate different cross versus same cross. And she has a great point. When into a different skill, you get 1 extra level, and when you cross to the same skill, you get 2 extra levels. Molly, is that essentially what you wanted me to say there?
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, it's a really great little thing to remember, and for your jumpers, it's an easy thing for them to remember to just tell them when you switch from one cross to a different cross, you get 1 extra level. When you switch from one cross to the same cross, 2 extra levels. Okay, and that makes a huge difference. Yeah, it's easy to remember. You don't have to be thinking, I went from Toad to AS to CL to TS to whatever, and in the middle of that you're going, okay, well, Toad to AS, that's a different skill, you get +1. To CL, you get another +1, but then you went to TS, you get another +1, but then you went to the different TS right away, so that's +2, so like in my brain, that's what I'm thinking, and as jumpers, they can see that's a little bit easier to recognize. Thanks, Molly, that's helpful. Good. So that's your crossing stuff. I'm going to move on if nobody has any other. Multiples. Judging multiples. This is section 3, page 13. Again, look, I think judging multiples, just like in USA Jump Rope, that multiple unders are the most exclusively excellent example of levels of difficulty in the entire book. That's true in USA Jump Rope, and I think it's true in FISAC, because I believe that multiples are just the best example. They put everything straightforward, and it's easy to understand as someone who's brand new. It might be a little bit more difficult to understand if you're somebody who's used to multiples and their levels of difficulty. So this is actually a time where it's helpful to not know anything about it. Which none of the people on this call are in that situation. So, it's going to be harder, but don't worry. A multiple under, obviously, is when the rope rotates more than once around your body and your feet don't touch the floor until after the last rotation is completed. The jumper has to jump over the last rotation. If the multiple under begins with a side swing, the skipper's feet must be off the floor immediately after the rope touches the floor during the first side swing. Otherwise, they'll decrease the level of the multiple by 1. And it says that your feet have to jump over the last rotation. I don't agree with that. I don't think that your feet have to jump over the last rotation. What I think they meant to say is that if your feet don't jump over the last rotation, they're not going to count the last rotation as a rotation in your multiple, which I'm okay with, because sometimes I need to be able to do, if I'm going to do a multiple under that has a release in it, like side, open, side, and then I'm going into a mic release as I land, and then I go up back into the air, catch it, and jump it. Yeah, I'm okay with the fact that they're only going to count that first one as a double instead of a triple, because I didn't go under it, the rope didn't go under my feet on the last one, because then to follow it up, I'm going to end up having a triple under that incorporates a level 3 skill into it, and I'm going to end up getting tons of credit. So I'll end up getting level 5 credit for that, which I'll explain to you in a moment why you get level 5. But anyway, so just to understand, that's one thing they're talking about with multiples. The general rule that you always follow, all double unders start at level 1. All triple unders start at level 2. All quadruple unders start at level 3, and so on and so forth. Okay? You might notice that this is exactly how USA Jump Ropes looks now. There's a reason for that. Okay? I'm the person who went through and made the USA Jump Rope rulebook look like that. If you remember that quads used to start at level 4 in USA Jump Rope, and now they don't. Quads start at level 3. This is why, because I wanted to make it more like the FISAC rulebook. I wanted to make it look like this is what we're doing in international competitions anyway, so why not do it like that here in the States? It's one of those changes that I tried to make to eventually have our organizations be taking steps in the same direction. So, this part should be very easy for our USA Jump Rope athletes to understand, because it's exactly how it's done in USA Jump Rope. So a quintuple under starts at level 4. A 6 under starts at level 5. A 7 under starts at level 6, because there is 6 levels now in FISAC. Also, you might see how that looks very similar to USA Jump Rope. And there's a point for that too, because I believe that athletes are able to do skills that are harder than level 5, and we need to be able to give them credit for it. So there's 6 levels now, which you'll be able to see. Part C says the only skill that can increase the difficulty level of a multi-under is the crisscross. Okay? And any multiple under that contains a crisscross will have the difficulty level increased by 1. This is also exactly like USA Jump Rope. Okay? A triple under is level 2. A triple under with a cross is level 3. A double under is level 1. A double under with a cross is level 2. A quadruple under is level 3. A quadruple under with a cross is level 4. You get a bonus level for doing a cross. Got it? Good. Now here comes some confusing stuff. If you land a multiple under in a level 2 skill, okay, remember, think about the level 2 skills that we talked about, like, I don't know, an AS, or a TS, or a Toad, or anything else. Sorry, I dropped something over here. If you land a multiple under in a level 2 skill, because you're just landing in that skill and you're not completing the skill, you only get 1 bonus level. The next part says that if you complete a level 2 skill while you're in the air, then you'll get 2 bonus levels. So if I land in a level 2 skill, I do a triple under landing in an AS. Okay? 1, 2, 3, and I land, with my arms behind my back in an AS. Then I will get a level 2, because it was a triple under, plus 1 level. Okay, so my final score for that skill would be level 3, because I did a triple under, which starts at level 2, and I got 1 bonus level for landing in a level 2 skill. Does that make sense? Yes, I'm going to go with yes on that. Okay, so by the same logic, in a level 3 skill gives you 2 bonus levels. Landing in a level 4 skill gives you 3 bonus levels. Okay, do you see how that I just extrapolated the same logic and applied it to different scenarios. If you land in a skill, the bonus levels that you get is one less than the level of the skill that you landed in. I guess if you could land in a level 5 skill, you would get 4 bonus levels, but I can't think of a level 5 skill that you could land in. Anyway, let's just leave it at that. If you complete Part E, if you complete a skill in the air, then you get credit for that skill as bonus. So if you complete a level 2 skill in the air, you get 2 bonus levels. This is why a TJ is level 4. You do a triple under, which all triple unders start at level 2. A TJ is a toad in the air that you are completing. You are completing a toad. If you remember back to crosses, I said toad was level 2 cross. So you're completing a level 2 skill in the air while you're doing a triple under. You get 2 levels for the triple under. You get 2 bonus levels for the fact that you completed a level 2 skill in the air, so level 4. You get level 4 credit for that TJ. Same reason why you get level 4 credit for a triple under AS, or a triple under CL, or any of that stuff. Okay? You get 2 bonus levels for completing a level 2 skill in the air. If you land in the level 2 skill, you only get 1 extra level. But you complete it, you get 2 extra levels. Then it goes on to say, if a level 3 skill is completed while doing a multiple, then you get 3 bonus levels, which is why earlier when I said that I was going to do a multiple under with a MIC release, and I said, well, I don't really care that they're going to count off for the first part because I'm going to get a level 5 credit for the MIC release triple. Here's why. Because a triple under always starts at level 3. You'll see later that a MIC release is a level 3 skill. Okay? So if I complete that level 3 skill, which was a MIC release, in the air while I'm doing a multiple under, in this case it was a triple under, I get 2 levels for the triple under, because all triple unders start at level 2, and I get 3 bonus levels for completing the MIC release in the air, because the MIC release is a level 3 skill. So I get 3 bonus levels, and my score for that skill would be a 5. That's huge. That's crazy. That's awesome. If I do a quadruple under MIC release, I can get level 6, which is the top of the scale. That's giant. I mean, that's like a huge bonus. Alright. Next part says, if a multiple under is a full rotation along the vertical axis, this just means if you spin 360 degrees, you get a level added to the multiple under. And I believe that we even went through and discussed the fact that if you complete 2 full rotations, that you get 2 bonus levels. So you get an extra level for each full rotation that you do. I haven't seen any. I've seen people do 720s. I have not seen anybody do a 1080 in jump rope. I don't know if anyone's working on it, but I definitely know that the 720 is there. And if they do a full rotation, they get an extra level. And if they do 2 full rotations, extra levels. I don't care if it's in the book or not. Part G. I think Part G has a typo in it. Molly, you're going to help me on this a little bit. I believe that Part G is written incorrectly because it says, specifically, if any of the points from C to E from above are combined into one multiple, then the skill level is determined by adding the level of multiple under from A, B, C, and D minus 1. I think that it meant to say that if they get any of the points from C through F, not through, but C through F, they can all combine them in. So you could do a rotation, you could do a triple under that has rotation and a cross, okay? And because you're getting credit for the rotation and credit for the cross, that you can get bonus levels for both of those, but then they're going to subtract a level from it because you are combining. And that's okay. So like, if I did a triple under EK with a cross, triple unders all start at level 2. I did a full rotation, so I get a bonus level, I'm at level 3. I did a cross, I get a bonus level, I'm at level 4. But I combined several things together, so they're going to take one level away. Boom. And I end up with level 3. And you might think like, well, that stinks. Why would you do that? Well, because you could add more than that. I could do a full rotation with a triple under and have a leg cross, complete a level 2 skill in the air. So I could have level 2 for the triple under, 2 bonus levels for completing the level 2 skill in the air, and a bonus level for the rotation, and then I subtract 1, and I'm at level 4. So that's actually is not bad. I think that's how they meant to do it. Molly, are you there? Maybe she's not. She's coaching. That's how I believe it to be, and I believe that's just a typo. So please, anyone who's listening to this, either now or later, here in Part G of Section 3 for multiple unders in levels of difficulty, this should say if any of the points from C to F above are combined into one multiple, then the skill level is determined by adding the levels of the multiple under all together. Disregard this part. You add it all up, and then you subtract 1. Any questions about that? There might very well be questions. Anybody? Might need examples of stuff?
I could really use an example. I know I'm a little bit lost, but I know that I could always call you. I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, for sure. Well, throw out an example of a multiple under, and let's work through it as a group.
Okay.
Give me a crazy multiple under.
A Jami.
Okay, a Jami. Not as crazy as it could have been, but let's take it for what.
Why don't you name one then?
Okay, but I'll do yours first, and then I'll come up with one. How about that? Jami is a triple under. All triple unders start at level 3. The Jami incorporates a Kruger cross, which is a level 2 skill, and you complete it while you're in the air. So that means you're going to get 2 levels for the triple under, 2 extra levels for the fact that you completed a level 2 skill. You'll put them all together, and you'll have a level 4 skill. So Jami's level 4. Here's one. How about a TJAS quad? So I go side, toed, AS, open, all in the air. Okay? It's a quadruple under. All quadruple unders start at what level? 3. So quadruple unders start at level 3. I'm doing a toad. I'm completing a toad, right?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm getting 2 bonus levels for the toad. I'm already at level 5. I get also 2 bonus levels for completing the AS. I'm at level 7, which doesn't even exist. Okay, but I'm at level 7 because I'm that good. And then, because I incorporated more than one thing, I added 2 things together. What do you have to do at the end? You have to take one away. -1. So now I'm at level 6. A TJAS quad, side, toed, AS open, is level 6. Okay? Starts at level 3 for the quad, gets 2 bonus levels for the toad, 2 bonus levels for the AS, subtract 1 at the end, you have level 6. Okay? So that's how you get there. And the same thing is going to be done with any type of unique creative multiple. So no, you're not limited to just a certain set of multiples. You can do any multiple you want. The process that the judge has to go through is to see what bonus levels you get and then take one away after they add it all together. So you can do anything you like as a multiple under, and you'll get credit. Very cool.
Very cool.
I'm very happy with that. Any other questions? Anybody? No? Okay, I'm going to keep going. We're doing well on time, so. Next is Section 4, Judging Gymnastics and Power Skills. Now this one is a little bit different than how we do it in USA Jump Rope. So I'll explain it. Part A says any gymnastic move where the rope does not go around the skipper's body will be judged as a level 1 skill. Okay? If the rope doesn't go around your body, you don't get credit for it. Now, sometimes people are like, well, what about like an aerial or, stuff like that. And I would say, well, technically, the rope does go around your body in an aerial, It just doesn't go under your feet. But your body, because your body's upside down in an aerial, and the rope passes underneath where the bottom of your body would have been, had your feet been on the ground, I would consider that going around your body. And you're going to get credit for like level 3 or something. I think what it meant here is that gymnastic skills that aren't done with ropes, or your ropes on the ground and you do a backflip, that's gonna not be given difficulty credit. Surprisingly, you'll still get credit for the required element of doing a gymnastic skill, regardless of whether or not the rope is incorporated at all, which is important to note, I guess, for double Dutch routines and stuff. Somebody dropped out. I think David maybe had to leave. So, any gymnastic move where the rope doesn't go around the body will be judged level 1 skill. Part B, which even emphasizes itself again for us by saying B in capital. The difficulty of the rope movement will be increased by at least 1 level when it is performed during a gymnastic or power skill, because the body is in or goes into or comes out of a restricted position, such as the power or gymnastic skill. What this means is that whatever you do while you're going into a power skill or coming out of a power skill, like let's say the AS has been a popular choice for me today. So if I do an AS going into a power skill, like AS to push-up, well, the AS by itself was going to be level 2, right? We already talked about that. So that means that because I'm doing the AS into a power skill, that I'll get an extra level. So AS to push-up becomes level 3 instead of level 2 for the AS. So the AS to push-up is level 3, and then coming out of the push-up, I get a separate skill level, which it talks about next. 1 level is added to the rope movement for coming out of a push-up or a frog or a split or crabs or doing a cartwheel, round-off, or a roll if the rope is jumped. So if I did AS to push-up and then I came up from the push-up and the rope came under my feet, well, technically a regular jump is a level 1 skill, and so I get an extra level added on to that. So I would get the AS to push-up part is level 3, and then coming out of the push-up is level 2. So for an AS to push-up up, I would get level 3 and then level 2. And it goes on and says, for example, coming out of a regular frog is level 2. If you do a frog to a CL, that's level 3, because the CL by itself was level 2, and because you're coming out of a power skill in the CL, you get a bonus level, which makes it level 3. Does that make sense? Any questions? No. Okay. 1 level is added to the rope movement for going into a push-up or a frog or a split or crabs if the rope is jumped. For example, a double under frog is level 2 because a double under by itself is always level 1. Okay, double under is always level 1, and you're getting an extra level for going into the frog. Now, I know that some jumpers are going to look at me and say, are you kidding me? A double under frog is only level 2? Well, yes. I'm not kidding you. It's only level 2. But it has to be that way in order for the logic to work. Okay? Because we can't just make a special exception and say, everything is exactly like this except for a double under frog, which is like this. Because then the judges are going to freak out when they're looking at it, and they're not going to be able to follow it correctly. And they're going to get confused, and they're not going to give you the right score anyway. So instead, we make it something the judges can understand and of very quickly, and so they can give you an accurate score. So that's why it's that way. So if anyone wants to complain, you can call me later, but I'll tell you the same thing. A triple under split is level 3. Why? Because all triple unders start at level 2, and you're going into a split, which gives you a bonus level. That's what makes it level 3. A TS double under into a push-up is level 4. Why? This one is takes a little bit more thinking. All double unders start at level 1, right? Here we are, level 1. I completed a level 2 skill in the air, the TS. Okay? Now how many bonus levels do I get? I get 2 bonus levels. So a double under TS is level 3 by itself. But a double under TS landing in a push-up, you also get an extra bonus level because you're landing in the push-up. So a double under TS landing in a push-up is level 4. That one might take a little bit of thinking, but I think you can manage it. Next, AS into push-up is level 3. We already talked about this. An AS by itself is level 2, so therefore AS going into a push-up, you get a bonus level, becomes level 4. Now, this next part is interesting. 2 extra levels are added if you're going immediately into an inverted position of the body. For example, AS into frog is level 5. Now, this brings up a very clear mistake, in my opinion. Back to the first example, when people were complaining to me about why is a double under frog level 2. Actually, if you look at this little part, a double under frog should be level 3. Because you double under starts at level 1. A frog is an inverted position of the body, and therefore you should get 2 extra levels. Double under start at level 1. You're going into an inverted position of the body. Boom, level 3. I believe they're wrong. I believe this is wrong.
Tyler?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to back you up for just a second, but I'm still thinking about the example you just gave for C. Wouldn't, where you go into a push-up, when they come out of the push-up, wouldn't they get another level added to it? The TS, double under TS, going into a push-up?
Double under TS landing and push-up, that's the example you want?
No, the one that you, on C, when you were going into...
1 level is added when you're coming out of. C is talking about coming out of push-up skills.
Right, so the example that you just gave, and we're counting up skill levels with the double under TS, landing in a push-up, but you didn't count that you get a level added into it for coming out of it, don't you?
Right. Here's the thing. It's not added into that. It's a separate level of difficulty. And I guess that should be made more clear. You get 1 score for going into a power skill. You get a separate score for coming out of a power skill.
It's not like it's not added to the same...
No, it's 2 separate things. So, for example, if I did double under TS, landing in a push-up, I get a 4 for going into that push-up. I then get a 2 for coming out of the push-up if I just jump it regularly. So I would get a 4, 2, and they're 2 separate scores.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, as long as that's clear, then I would have to say, again, back on the end of Part D where it says 2 extra levels are added, not is added, if going immediately into an inverted position of the body. Gosh, that seems wrong in both ways. Number one, it just earlier said a double under frog was level 2, which I believe is level 3, because you're going into an inverted position of the body. And then it says AS into frog is level 5. Well, an AS is only level 2. So if you're going to add 2 bonus levels to it, an AS to frog should be level 4. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, it should totally be level 4 and not level 3. I mean level 5. So someone remind me to email that to Peter.
You're going to check that and then let us know if there's changes?
I'm going to tell you that that's the way it should be. And if I hear differently, then I'll let you know. Because I strongly believe that that is just wrong.
Okay, so it's AS into a frog would be a level 4, not a 5 versus a...
Yes. Yes.
Okay, a double frog being a level 2.
And the reason why is because except, actually maybe not. Because an AS into a frog, you have to do like a double under, right? AS to frog, you know, it's like a double under. And a double under with an AS is level 3, and then landing in an inverted position of the body is level 5. Okay. That could work. But then an AS to push-up should be level 4. Because double under AS. I'll ask about it. I believe that either the AS to push-up has to be level 4 and then the AS to frog can be level 5, or the AS to push-up is level 3 and then the AS to frog has to be level 4. Can't be both ways. Can't be level 3 and then level 5. That's just no good. I'll find out and I'll let you know. I stand strongly in my previous statement. Okay. Part E. 2 levels are added to the rope movement for coming out of a one-handed push-up, a one-handed frog, a front flip, a back flip, or similar moves. Okay? For example, coming out of a one-handed frog, just a regular one-handed frog with a jump. The jump is level 1, and you're getting 2 extra levels because you're coming out of a one-handed frog. So boom, level 3. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The next part says that 2 levels are added for going into a one-handed push-up, one-handed frog. For example, going to double under one-handed push-up is level 3. A double under with a cross falling into a one-handed push-up is level 4. Why? Well, a double under is level 1. And you get 2 bonus levels for landing in the one-handed push-up. So, boom. That's level 3. A double under with a cross is level 2. So you get 2 bonus levels for landing in the one-handed push-up, and that makes level 4. And then if you came out of it, so let's say you did a double under with a cross landing in a one-handed push-up, that's level 4, and then you came out of it, you jumped it, you'd get a level 3. So you get a level 4 for going into that skill and a level 3 for coming out of that skill. You don't get a level 7 by combining them, but you get a level 4, and then separately you get a level 3. Does that make sense? Okay. So, looking down to part G, this is the part that is really cool for us. And this has only recently been added. Coming out of a power skill backwards with the rope initially in front of your body adds 3 levels to the rope movement. For example, coming out of a push-up backwards is level 4. A backwards kamikaze, or a dark side, is level 5. Coming out of a frog backwards into a push-up is also level 5. Sunny D would be level 4 in this case. Even though Sunny D should be harder than level 4.
That's good news, though.
That's great news. I mean, because previously it just said that a backwards frog was exactly the same as a forwards frog. And I was livid about that. I sent so many emails and had so many conversations with people that all started out with, "Are you kidding me? A backwards frog is the same as a forwards frog?" It made me so mad. They saw they saw that and they fixed it. So, good news, everyone. Next part, part H. 3 levels are added to the rope movement for fully completed aerials. Okay, earlier when it said backflip and front flip, it was talking about handsprings. So I guess it's important to say back in part E where it said a front flip is level 3, what it means is a front handspring is level 3. It will call what we would call a flip, they're calling an aerial. And what we call a handspring, they call a flip. Okay? Front handsprings, back handsprings, level 3. 3 levels are added to the rope movement for fully completed aerials. For example, a back tuck is level 4, but a back tuck with a double under, including a cross, would be level 5. Because the back tuck, if you do a double under, level 1, and double under with a cross is level 2. And then for doing the back tuck, you get 3 extra levels. So now it's level 5. Does that make sense? A triple under back tuck is level 5. A triple under with a cross back tuck is level 6. A triple under TJ back tuck, technically, triple under start at level 2, you get 2 extra levels for completing a level 2 skill in the air, and you get 3 extra levels for the back tuck. Technically, that's a level 7 skill, but we can't give credit for level 7. Not yet. I tried. But you'll get level 6, because that's the highest. So back tuck, triple under TJ, level 6. You maxed out. Good job. The next part, section I. Going from one restricted position of the body immediately to a similar or another restricted position of the body will increase the difficulty of the rope movement by 2 extra levels. For example, a regular kamikaze is level 4. Is that right? Hold on. Yeah, that's right. So it's saying that going from a push-up to a push-up is level 4. So if you go frog and do a belch, that'll be level 2, level 4. If you do both skills on one hand, that increases level by one hand again, by 1 level again. So starting and ending a kamikaze on one hand would be level 5. So you go one-handed push-up straight to one-handed push-up. It'd be level 3, level 5. You get 2, and then you'd get a level 3 when you came up from one-handed push-up. So it'd be 3, 5, 3, technically. But you could go push-up, kamikaze with a cross, and you'd get, level 2, 4, 4 again, probably. I think. Yes. Any questions about power skills or gymnastic skills? Anybody? No?
No, that was easier than crosses.
You think it was? Good.
When you clarified what they
crosses
can...
confuse me. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. At least power skills you've got. Good. Okay. Next. Actually, we've got power skills and multiples. Look, you guys are doing great. All right. Next, releases. I think releases are pretty straightforward. So I'll explain them to you. There are no level 1 releases. Any release is going to be at least level 2. So here it breaks it down very explicitly for you. The skipper catches one handle of the rope, which is moving across the floor or around a body part. So if the rope, you let go of it and then you pop it back up and you catch it, that's level 2 release. If you, well, no, that's pretty much it. Or the skipper catches one handle of the rope, which is moving through the air in an incomplete revolution. So they let go of the handle and then they re-grasp it, but it doesn't spin in a circle like a mic release. They just kind of let go and then grab it again. It kind of just floats there for a second. That would also be level 2. Level 3. After the rope completes a revolution in the air, the skipper catches one handle of the rope as it is moving through the air. Okay, so a mic release. That's a mic release. Mic release is level 3, just like in USA jump rope. Good news. The skipper simultaneously catches 2 handles of the rope, but the rope does not complete a full revolution in the air. So a 2-handle rope release that doesn't go all the way around in a circle. Okay, that you don't really see a lot of those. But I guess technically you could be jumping and then let go of both of your handles and then catch them again before the rope spins around and jump. That would also be level 3. Alright, level 4, the skipper catches the 2 handles of a rope which are moving through the air after the rope has made a complete revolution in the air. So I did a two-handle rope release. The rope spun all the way around. I caught both handles and then jumped. That's level 4. Okay? Or the skipper catches one handle of the rope as it's moving through the air with one hand in a restricted position after the rope's made a complete revolution. So this would be a mick release, but I catch the mick release in a toad, or I catch it in a CL, or I catch it in some other restricted position. Okay? Understood? Next, whilst in the air, the skipper catches a rope with the handle of the rope, which is moving through the air. It made a full revolution, and they bring the rope under their body before landing. Huh. If, after catching him before landing, a skill is being performed, credit will be given for this skill as well as to the release. So apparently, doing a mick release and jumping, like pulling it under your feet, is going to give level 4. I think that that's kind of not really the case. I believe that mick release get level 3 skills. Perhaps what they're talking about is maybe like if you did a double under mick release, yeah, that would be level 4. But I've already talked about the fact that a triple under mick release is level 5. So I believe this is talking about a double under mick release. Level 5. After the rope makes a complete revolution in the air, you catch both handles as it's moving through the air, but you catch it with one hand in a restricted position. So, alright, I do a two-handle rope release. It goes up in the air, the rope spins around, and as I catch it with one of my hands behind my back, and then I keep going. That would be hard to do, also very risky, but you'd get level 5 for it. Or, it says, after the rope has completed a full revolution in the air, the skipper catches one handle with the body already in a restricted position that limits the movement of your hands, as in a frog or an aerial. So, if I'm doing a mick release and I catch it in a frog, or I'm doing a mick release and I catch it while I'm doing a back tuck, that would be level 5. Okay? And then it goes on to say, everything that's more complicated is a level 6 skill, which is kind of a nice thing, really, that it just says if it's more complicated than that, you just give it level 6. So you don't really have to know what level 6 is. You just know level 6 is harder than level 5. And if you're looking at something and you think that should be level 5, and then you look at something else later and you say that's harder than what I just saw, then it should be level 6. So you don't have to have a clear, defined reason for giving something level 6. Just the fact that you see something that's harder than level 5. Any questions about releases?
Nope.
Nope?
Nope.
I need to get another bottle of water real quick. Hold on 1 second. Everybody breathe for 30 seconds.
Tyler, you're doing a great job.
I don't think you heard that.
Are you back, Tyler?
Yeah, he didn't have his headphones on. Now he does. Go ahead.
What?
I said you're doing a great job, honey.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Difficulty is pairs interaction. Now, pairs interaction is, fortunately for us, pretty much exactly the way we judge pairs interaction in single rope. Okay? It is judged by saying the difficulty of whatever they do in a pairs interaction is one level higher than what it would have been without pairs interaction. Okay? So if I do a cross while I'm traveling somebody or scooping somebody, the cross by itself was level 1. So a cross in pairs interaction is level 2. If I do a traveler with a push-up, a push-up by itself is level 2. So a push-up in a traveler is level 3. Okay? A double under toad, all double unders start at level 1. I got 2 bonus levels because I completed a level 2 skill. So a double under toad is level 3. If I do a double under toad while I'm scooping somebody, that becomes level 4. Okay, so it's just a bonus, as a bonus level for doing pairs interaction. It goes on to say the degree of difficulty of the pairs interaction is only as difficult as the single rope skill being performed at the time if one of the skippers is not jumping the rope and if the handle held by that skipper is not in a restricted position. So what it means is that if I'm doing a sharing handles and I'm holding one side of the rope and Johnny Jumper is holding the other side of the rope, and Johnny is going to do a backflip in the sharing handles. Well, he's going to get credit for doing that backflip, and we will get credit for doing a pairs interaction as far as required elements is concerned, but we will not get a bonus level for that backflip. Like the backflip, let's say, is he just jumps it once, and it becomes a level 4 skill. We will only get level 4. We won't get an extra level for pairs interaction because I'm not jumping the rope. Now, we could get an extra level if, even though I'm not jumping the rope, one of my hands was in a restricted position. So maybe I was turning for Johnny's backflip with one hand behind my back, or I was turning for it with one hand under my leg, or something like that, or while I was in a push-up position. I don't know. But I did something to restrict my body's position. Then we would get a bonus level for doing that skill. Or I could just be jumping it at the same time. I could be jumping in the rope while Johnny's doing the backflip, and although that would be very close proximity to Johnny's feet and my face, then we still get an extra level for doing that. Okay, so that's pairs interaction. Any questions about pairs interaction? No?
Yep.
Everybody good? Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, that is the whole of single rope levels of difficulty. And what I wanted to do is just there's a difference in the double Dutch levels of difficulty, but not really that much. I mean, we've already talked about generally the levels of difficulty for skills. And we'll just go through really briefly in the next, I know we're almost out of time, just really briefly through the double Dutch levels of difficulty stuff. It's important to know that in double Dutch you're giving credit as like a snapshot, similar to what we do in USA Jump Rope. You're trying to think of the double Dutch group as a unit, okay? The way I think about it, and I explain it to people, is that just like in single rope, we have hands and we have feet. Okay, if my feet are doing something, that could give me credit. If my hands are doing something, that could give me credit. And if I'm doing something with my hands and my feet, like a toad, my legs lifting up and my hands are crossing under my leg, then I'll get credit for both at the same time. I don't get 2 different credits for it. I get one that's more difficult. And in double Dutch, I like to think of it the same way. The turners are the hands, and the jumpers are the feet. So your jumper could do something by themselves, and that'll give you credit. The turners could do something by themselves, and that will give you credit. If they do it at the same time, it does not give you 2 separate things of credit. What it does is it gives you 1 credit for level of difficulty that is higher. Okay? You're taking a snapshot and adding it all together. That's how I think of it, and it works for me. Hopefully that'll work for you. Every time a new skill is performed, credit is given simultaneously to both the difficulty of the skill and the difficulty of the turning. In other words, a snapshot is the skills the skippers or those not holding the rope and the turners or those who are holding the rope, what they're doing at that particular moment, and each different skill results in a new snapshot. The level of difficulty of the snapshot is the sum of the turner and the skipper difficulty levels. Okay? Now, it says in scoring the turning that there are only 2 different ways of turning ropes that will be counted by the difficulty judges. Skills that are performed while the ropes are turning in a different direction, like double Dutch or backwards double Dutch or even pop-ups, those will be scored. skills that are performed while the ropes are turning in the same direction, but they have to be at least 90 degrees apart as their phase. Like in Chinese wheel, they're 180 degrees apart. One rope is down and one rope's up. And they're going boom, boom, boom. Even though they're turning the same direction, that still counts. What does not count is when the skills are done in a single double Dutch rope or both ropes turning in the same direction without a phase difference. Okay, both ropes turning in the same direction at the same time, that won't be scored. Okay, you can do it if you want to, but it's not going to give you any credit. So mostly don't do it. But if you want to, you know, whatever, it's your routine. But I do think that it's important to make sure we understand that what they're looking for is at least a 90-degree phase difference in between the ropes. Ultimately, a 180-degree phase difference is the most obvious, and I would stick with that. Goes on to say a repeated jumper skill will only be scored a second time if the turning was done in a different way. Okay, so for example, if I do a push-up, and then I do another push-up later in the routine, the only way that they're going to give me credit for that second push-up is if the turner involvement was different than what it was in the first. So if I do a push-up with regular turning, great, I'm going to get a level 2. If I do a push-up with a cross, while the turners are doing a cross, then I'll end up getting to get credit for the push-up again in a higher level. We'll talk about what level that is. So what you need to know as far as levels of difficulty written there on page 7, it talks about level 1, level 2, and level 3. Essentially, level 1 stuff is footwork stuff, which doesn't get credit. Level 2 stuff is going into or out of one of those power skills, like push-up, frog, split, crab. So going into that is level 2, or coming out of it is level 2. Level 3 is the transition from one special position of the body into a different one. So like from a frog to a push-up, or from a push-up to a push-up, or from a split to a push-up, or from a split to a split, or whatever. All those things going from one to the other. So if I did jumping my double Dutch routine, if I went split, split, up, I get a level 2 for going into the first split. I get a level 3 for switching from the split to another split. Then I get a level 2 for coming out of the split. So even though I only did 2 skills, split, split, I'm going to get 3 marks. 2, 3, 2. Okay? Make sense? And then it goes on to say, however, exiting from a special body position does not become a level 3 skill, even if it's done after a combination of skills. Well, duh, it just said level 2 is coming out of a skill. So it doesn't matter what you do in there. It just matters that you're coming out of it, and that's a level 2. A gymnastic skill is judged differently. The level 2 gymnastic skills, such as round off and roll. Level 3 gymnastic skills are front flip, back flip. Remember that those were front handspring, back handspring, and kip. Those are level 3 skills. And all aerials, like a side aerial or a front tuck or a back tuck or anything like that, are level 4. So that's the only thing you can do as a jumper that will automatically get you level 4. The only way to get higher than that is to have your turners doing stuff at the same time. Okay, it goes on here to describe a little bit about double Dutch freestyle. You can look at in time. That's page 17. Here is the import. Someone's phone just vibrated. That was weird. I can like hear it through the.
That was mine.
You're kind of going in and out, Tyler. I couldn't hear the last couple of minutes.
Sorry, the last couple of minutes?
Like the last minute. So
okay. I said was that double Dutch pairs listed right the exact same. It just tells you more specifically, like, okay, both jumpers need to be doing this, or one's doing a different level 2 skill or whatever. And what I said was that part can be looked over on your own. There's nothing special I need to say about that.
Oh, no. That's totally fine.
Okay. The last part that I wanted to talk about was judging the turner. And these are bones that get added on to whatever the jumper was doing. Okay? So the turners score 1 level if the rope that is jumped by the skipper is turned with one hand in a restricted position when it's jumped or immediately after the jump. Okay, so like if you are doing a side straddle in the middle of the ropes, okay, that's level 1, and normally I wouldn't give any credit for that. But if while you're doing that side straddle, I put an arm under my leg, then that's going to be a level 2 because the footwork was level 1 and I'm adding a bonus level to it. If I turn with my arm under the leg while you're doing a push-up, the push-up would have been level 2 by itself, and now it's going to be level 3 because I get a bonus level because one of the hands is involved. You get 2 extra levels if it's turned with 2 restricted hands. Okay? So like if my hand is under my leg and the other person's hand is under their leg, that is 2 bonus levels. Okay? That makes sense? Because we're both in restricted positions. Think of it like, again, like where I said like the turners were the hands of the jumper and the jumper is the feet. If one hand does something cool, they get 1 level. If both hands do something cool, they get 2 levels. Okay? If the turner continues turning the rope in a restricted position, they only get credit for the first time that the rope is jumped like that and at that speed. So if they stay with their arm under their leg, like we've seen before, then they are not going to get credit for again and again and again keeping their arm under their leg unless they're changing the speed of the rope. Like the first time they do a single bounce, and the second time they do a double under, and then a triple under, and then a quadruple. They will get credit for having their arm under their leg for each of those different speeds, but not more than once. Okay? So it's also applicable for basic jumps in Chinese wheel. I know I'm over time. I'm wrapping it up. The turners get 1 level for turning a double under, 2 extra levels for turning a triple or quad, 3 extra levels for turning anything faster than a quadruple under. So this has also changed a lot. It used to just be that you got like 1 level for turning a double or 2 levels for turning a triple or quad or faster. And then it was like, but we do a lot more than just quads. We do 6s and 8 unders and stuff. So you get 3 extra levels for things faster than quadruple under. If a multiple is turned with restricted hands, you get bonus credit for both. So like if you do a 6 under with a cross, you're going to get the 3 levels for the 6 under, and you're also going to get the extra level for the cross. Okay, so that's like level 4 right there. Actually, maybe even level 5 because both of the turner's hands are restricted. Or, you know, whatever. If you do a triple under, 6 under, where one person turns their body backwards and the other person is turning with their arm under a leg, while that would be very difficult, would be level 5. Landing in a skill while the turners are turning a triple or quadruple under increases the level of the skill by 2, unless it's a level 1 skill. So, like I said, if you do a quadruple under landing in a push-up, the push-up would normally be level 2, but you're doing a quad, so that gives you 2 bonus levels, so that would be level 4. Landing in a skill while we're turning more than a quadruple under increases it by 3. So a 6 under landing in a push-up would be a level 5 skill. The turners get 1 level for jumping the rope, such as like a jump through or jumping in Chinese wheel. If we continue jumping in the same manner without changing the restriction of our hands or the speed at which we're jumping, the credit is only given the first time. It says if the turners restrict their hands while jumping the rope, then they get extra levels in addition to the extra level for jumping. So it just means that you can combine those 2 points. Like I could be getting credit for jumping Chinese wheel as a turner, and I could also get credit for turning with an arm under the leg. So I could get, you know, many more extra levels, and this is where it really starts to add up. A release in double dutch which is caught is level 3. A release in double dutch which is caught in a restricted position is level 4. However, if the routine does not continue fluently after the catch, then it will be decreased by 1 level. Now, I know that was a ton of information, and there's much more to follow up on with, there's much more to follow up. Is everybody still hearing me?
Yeah, it's just breaking a little bit, but that's okay. I'll get it.
Breaking up a lot.
Yeah, what? Dang it. Well,
It's break up, so I don't know what.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what I meant to say there was that I understand that's a lot of information that you guys got really fast, but it is technically covering all of the information for the different types of judging. It's better when I don't share my screen. Yeah. So I'm going to follow up with you guys, and of course everybody else who didn't get. Obviously, we're not just training 3 FISAC judges for the entire country. But when this is put up online, I think that people will really be able to benefit from being able to go back and watch what we've covered here today, as well as the questions that you guys have had in our explanations. I'm going to also make sure that the YouTube videos that I've been talking about get emailed out to everybody. And my ultimate goal is to compile an email list of people who are interested in this FISAC information, because I do not want to have to continue to bombard USA Jump Rope membership with information about FISAC if they're not interested in it. But I also don't want to leave anybody out. So I'm going to try to be compiling a list of people who are interested in receiving the FISAC information, and I'll email those people the information about all the YouTube videos, my YouTube channel, where they can find these videos online. And also I plan on doing what are called question and answer sessions, maybe once or twice a month, where I come on and get in a room like this, and anybody's welcome to come in and join and either ask questions or bring up particular examples or whatever they have interested in knowing about FISAC and judging stuff. So does anybody have anything before we go?
I think I'm good right now. I have enough information to at least go off of and talk to the girls, and appreciate your time on your Saturday of a busy week that you've had. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. Mom, anything else?
No, I'm just going to have to go through the double Dutch stuff and make my way through
Right.
that.
I mean, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
The examples that are out there are really good, so I'll share that with everybody. And Molly, I'm assuming you are teaching right now, so unfortunately when you come back, this meeting will have concluded and you'll find yourself having been kicked out of the meeting. Just keep in touch, and I'll show you where, I'll send it out where you guys can access this stuff later online. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Silas.